A very warm welcome to our today's speaker, Ashok Batra ji, all the delegates who have joined in. I welcome you all to today's session, second day session on GST, wherein we'll be discussing on adjudication and assessment. A very warm welcome to our today's speaker, Ashok Batra ji, all the delegates who have joined in. Just a second, sir. I welcome you all to today's session, second day session on GST, wherein we'll be discussing on adjudication and assessment. Just a second. I welcome you all to today's session on GST, wherein we'll be discussing on adjudication. Yeah, just the YouTube page was live, so the voice was repercutating again. Friends, today being 1st of April, I welcome Saroji Swaika, my deputy convener, but from today onward, he is the convener of Views Exchange. I welcome you, sir. And in absentia, Nitesh Kumar Morji, past chairman of EIRC, he is being the deputy convener of our Views Exchange from 1st of April. I wish both of them grand success in the coming 1 year time frame. Now I would request convener of Views Exchange, Saroji Swaika ji, to kindly proceed.
Thank you, Naveen. Ashok ji, a very warm welcome and namaskar from my side today on Views platform. Sir, after a long back of 2 years, though we are continuing the virtual programs, in the long run, we are going for physical programs also, wherein I would humbly request you, whenever requested, please do come down to Calcutta for a session in Views Exchange also.
Positive.
Thank you, sir. I welcome all the delegates who have joined in and who will be joining. Today's topic is with respect to assessment and adjudication with respect to GST. Of late, the department has started issuing notices, though completed the past assessments also, which were time barred. So, Shri Ashok ji will be highlighting this assessment proceedings and adjudication in two parts. First, I think he will take up with assessments. Thereafter, we will discuss with the question and answers, which will come down on the chat box as usual, to which Ashok ji will answer to the satisfaction of all the delegates. Thereafter, in the second part, he will be continuing with the adjudication part. With this, I request Mayank Agarwal to give a brief introduction of Ashok ji. Mayank.
Thank you, Saroj bhaiya. Good afternoon, everyone. Although Ashok sir needs no introduction, yet it's a pleasure for me to introduce him. CA Ashok Batra became a chartered accountant in 1981. Subsequently, became a law graduate in 2009. Besides, he is also an alumnus of well-known Shriram College of Commerce. Presently, he is a senior partner in Messrs. A.K. Batra and Associates, a leading chartered accountancy firm of Northern India, which he commenced way back in 1982. He has excellent academic credentials and immense exposure in the field of taxation, with specialization in Delhi VAT, service tax and GST. He possesses rich and diverse professional experience of 4 decades in business and taxation consultancy and 16 years experience in litigation matters. Many cases professionally represented by him and adjudicated in favor of his clients have been reported in prominent law journals. His professional dedication and integrity of the highest standard have enabled him to be continuously associated with leading organizations, both in public and private sectors. In order to share his diligently gained knowledge of indirect taxes with his professional fraternity, he has been writing articles and books ever since 2004. Some of his books have been GST Law and Procedures, GST Ready Reckoner, and GST Audit and Annual Return. In the past, he has also had the privilege of writing several widely acclaimed books on Delhi VAT, service tax for more than 12 years. He has effectively addressed more than 1,500 seminars and conferences on indirect taxes organized by professional institutes like ICAI, ICSI, Chamber of Commerce, trade associations, NSE, indirect taxes and narcotics, nearly throughout India. He has also been a faculty of certificate course on indirect taxes of ICAI at all its leading centers. Furthermore, he has been invited to deliver Union Budget talk on indirect taxes by many study circles, branches and regional councils of ICAI, as well as by leading chambers of commerce, online portals like Tax India Online, and industry and media channels. Another feather had been added in his cap when he was conferred with Best Speaker Award of Indirect Taxes by NIRC of ICAI. Besides, he also had the privilege of being a special invitee to the GST and the Indirect Taxes Committee of the ICAI for many years. Welcome Ashok Batra ji to our conference. Over to you.
Thank you, Mayank. Sir, before we start, I would request all our guests, as discussed with our speaker today, please do not put your membership number and name in the chat box. Rather, use it for question answer session. Further, sir also wants a direct interaction with all our participants. So if you have any questions in mind, which you don't want to put up in chat box, but want to discuss directly, please raise your hand. Sir will be able to see the hands. And once sir finds it convenient to address, we will unmute you. So request to use the chat box for questions. And if you want to have a direct conversation, please raise a hand. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Naveen-ji. At the outset, I would like to thank the whole new team of Calcutta CA Study Circle for providing with this opportunity, wherein I can share my views on a very interesting topic of assessment and adjudication in GST. This topic is not only interesting, it is really absorbing and is the need of the hour. Friends, if we look at GST implementation, then the first phase was where we were saying if we should be transitioned to the GST, we are able to file our returns somewhere. We were not even having technical glitches, trans one issues and all that. Second phase was with regard to fake invoices, which has now currently slightly come down. And this is the phase which is for the professionals. Now, as per the time limit prescribed in section 73-74, which we'll be discussing in detail, we have sufficient time today. And looking to the assessment procedures, now the time has come when the department will test whatever information we have supplied to the department in the form of various statements like GSTR1 or filing return in the form of GSTR3B, claiming the credit, etc. So whether that information is as per the provisions of law or not. We have seen and conducted GST audit also. That will also be subject matter of scrutiny by the department now. And our reputation, once again, will be tested by the department. At the outset of the GST, we used to say it is a great professional opportunity. And chartered accountants who are expert in accounts, and this law being accounting based issue, we will certainly overcome all the other professionals and dominate this area of practice. Undoubtedly, I have no hesitation in saying so. We have been able to do that. But in the process, we have seen certain black sheep in the profession or certain people who have been casual in their approach. And a lot of professionals were in trouble and their personal liberties were also being affected. Now, GST audit is gone. In one way, our credibility will not be tested by the department. But yes, now this assessment and adjudication will be there, where our advice is given to the client, may be subject to challenge by the department. Today's topic, assessment and adjudication, and both being incorporated into GST is itself a very unique concept. If you look at pre-GST era, then there has been adjudication so far as service tax, excise and custom is concerned, and there was an assessment era in income tax and VAT law. Now, in GST law, provisions relating to assessment are also enshrined in section 59 to 64, and then adjudication provisions 73, 74, and of course the guiding factor 75 is also there. What is the difference between assessment and adjudication? What is assessment? if you look at the law says making a judgment wherein the tax liability of the person is concerned is the assessment procedure. This substance is being reported in various Supreme Court judgments and has been defined in GST, which defines the term assessment under Section 2 and includes various terms which we'll be discussing in due course of time. Right now, if you go to the English dictionary meaning of the term assessment, that is making a judgment. We all professional brothers are mainly practicing in income tax, and we have seen when we file our income tax returns, with that return, we only attach the financial statements and other particulars and documents for which we are claiming exemption from income tax. Then, on the basis of certain criteria, department is selecting certain cases for scrutiny. Those notices are being served, and based on my reply to the questions raised by the assessing officer, my judgment is being made, which is time bound. So assessment means I am filing the information that is being scrutinized by the assessing officer, who asks me certain questions, and on the basis of my reply, he determines my taxable income. Once that assessment is being made in income tax law, department cannot go in appeal against that order of assessing officer. Assessee can file an appeal against that order of assessing officer in case he felt aggrieved by it. And then, if that commissioner appeal order is being decided against me or in favor of me, then depending upon if it is in favor of me, the department can challenge it before higher authorities, tribunal, etc. And similarly, if commissioner appeal has given partly in my favor, so on that partly judgment which goes against me, I can file an appeal against that to the higher forum. So this is the concept. Once the assessment is being finalized, the amount becomes due to the department and recovery procedure starts. But in GST law, this is not the scenario. This assessment which is being envisaged in GST is entirely different than the assessment procedure which has been there under the income tax law, for which we are really conversant with, we are aware. So therefore, it is very, very important to understand the distinction between assessment under GST and income tax so that we can guide our clients correctly. Then comes adjudication. What is adjudication? Whenever there is a short payment of tax, non-payment of tax, erroneous claim of refund, or wrong availment or utilization of credit, the department can serve me notice under Section 73 if all the four events are otherwise than by way of willful misstatement, suppression, and fraud. If it is with these parameters, then the show cause notice has to be served under Section 74. And after that, adjudication is being done. So this is adjudication procedure. Unlike assessment, when the department served me a notice, he asked me a number of questions, whether you registered, whether you made this supply, at which rate you have made, why you are not liable to pay tax. So the whole inquiry process will go. You will file the reply. And this process may go for a couple of months and sometimes over a number of years, where the case is not getting time barred. They take years in investigation. And during investigation, you rely upon all the relevant provisions, case laws, circulars, department gives his own viewpoint. And thereafter, on those issues where there is no agreement between the two, this show cause notice is being served. This is only a notice, no demand is being created. Kindly appreciate. After doing the investigation for a couple of months, this notice has been served to me, understanding all the legal proposition and the department giving their own proposition, and thereafter this notice is being served. No demand, it is only a notice. Normally, a period of 30 days is being given to the supplier to file the reply against the same. You file the reply, and after that, this is the result of notice wherein no demand is being created. That particular amount which is being proposed in the show cause notice is become subject matter of adjudication and appeal. Now, kindly appreciate, as compared to income tax assessment procedure, here everything has been done. I have submitted all the documents. They have selected certain documents which they want to support their case while issuing the show cause notice, which we normally called a relied upon documents. Those documents are being attached with the show cause notice and the notice being served. So what does it mean? If you look at the adjudication process, you'll find it is entirely different than the assessment one. Here, a dispute has already arisen between the assessee and the department. Assessee ने extend लिया, department ने extend लिया, दोनों पे agreement नहीं हुआ, show cause हो गया, department ने अपना case दिया, allegations के short में, आप अपनी defense देंगे. But then, unlike income tax where they ask the questions, you reply and they make the assessment, here everything is being done, but no assessment order. It is only show cause notice which emerges out of this. And thereafter, that means a dispute has already arisen between the assessee and the department. So there is an adjudication process, not an assessment, because adjudication means resolving a dispute between the two parties. So the dispute which has arisen between the assessee and the department is being resolved by an adjudicating authority which has been defined under the law, and we can go in appeal against the order of the adjudicating authority only. So the adjudication is nothing but resolving a dispute rather than making a judgment. Now, what are the shortcomings of the adjudication? After a long investigation, the show cause has emerged, no demand has been created, then the process of adjudication will take some time. Thereafter, once the adjudication is being done, then the demand will be confirmed. And against that demand, if I pay 10% of the tax, not interest and penalty, then I can file an appeal before the commissioner appeal, first appellate authority. Unlike pre-GST era where commissioner was also adjudicating authority, and in case the adjudication is being done by the commissioner, the first appeal directly goes to the tribunal. But in GST, it is not so. Commissioner has not been named as the adjudicating authority. Adjudicating authority is only up to additional commissioner. So order passed by assistant and joint, assistant and deputy will be appealed to joint commissioner, additional commissioner. Order passed by joint and additional will appeal to commissioner appeal. So there is a two-tier system. So once that demand has been created, let us say for 1 crore, tax 70 lakh, penalty let us say 1 crore, I have to pay only 10 lakh rupees as pre-deposit before the commissioner, and rest of the demand automatically gets stayed in terms of section 107. When I go to tribunal, then 112 shall apply. So the department has got only 10% of the tax after a huge investigation and adjudication. And here again, if the matter has been decided against me, I have to file an appeal before the tribunal where I am supposed to pay 20% of the tax which has been determined against me. And on that basis, my matter is being heard, and that tribunal can take a couple of years because there's no time limit so as applicable to the tribunal in deciding the matters. So the department has been able to get only 30% of the tax over a number of years. Whereas in assessment, the demand is being created, the whole amount becomes due and the recovery starts immediately. Here the department has to wait for a number of years. So that was the problem in adjudication process. And realizing that this adjudication process is very lengthy, and give a sufficient time to the assessee to manage its affairs. For example, I am litigating certain matters. I realize that ultimately I am going to lose this case and there will be a huge demand against me. What I will do? I will try to dispose of my properties. When the demand crystallizes against me, I don't have any asset to declare to the government. So this adjudication process, which was followed in excise, custom and service tax, was having this long procedure. Of course, the percentage which I am talking about, these percentage has been specified in GST law. There the percentages were different. And somewhere during some period, those percentages were also not there. It was introduced on 6th August 2014 once again. But anyway, let's forget about that. So those were the procedures which was being followed. And that is the basis of difference between the two, that the government prompted and decided that we will take assessment and adjudication both. But then again, I am telling you, this assessment in GST is entirely different and independent as compared to income tax assessment. Don't, please, for God's sake, don't compare that two. Assessment, जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा था, has been defined in GST law also. Subclause 11 of Section 2 clearly says assessment means determination of tax liability and includes self-assessment, reassessment, provisional assessment, summary assessment, and best judgment assessment. Though they say reassessment, but when I look at the provisions, there is no provision which deals with the reassessment. So long as GST is concerned, as I told you, 59 is self-assessment, 60 is provisional assessment, 61 is scrutiny of return, which is where you are getting the notices under AS-70 10, and that too in a huge numbers. And very recently, the department has already issued a circular saying the guidelines, SOP, for scrutiny of returns for the years 17, 18, and 18, 19. And that circular runs into 14 pages. If my professional brothers have not gone through that circular, kindly look at that one. That will tell you how the scrutiny of return can be take place. Then there are two best judgment assessment, Section 62 and 63. Unregistered persons and non-filer of returns. And then there is a special assessment under Section 6. Now, we will go and look at each and every aspect. If you look at Section 59, it starts with every registered person shall self-assess the tax payable under this Act and furnish a return for each tax period as defined in Section 39. हम सबको पता है, हम सब सेल्फ असेसमेंट करते आ रहे हैं इनकम टैक्स में. अपने आप इनकम कंप्यूट करो, अपने आप डिडक्शंस क्लेम करो, अपने आप टैक्स पेबल लिखो, अपने आप टैक्स जो पे हुए हैं या एडवांस टैक्स है उनका क्रेडिट दो, रेस्ट ऑफ द अमाउंट यू पे. यही हम सर्विस टैक्स में भी करते आए हैं, यही हम वैट में करते आए हैं, यही एक्साइज में और यही जीएसटी में उन्होंने कहा. This provision is applicable to the registered person first of all, not to the taxable person. There's a difference between the two. Taxable person is the one who is liable to pay the tax, but registered person is the one who is registered with the department in terms of Section 25 of the CGST Act. So a registered person is supposed to furnish the return. So while filing the return, he has to do the self-assessment, and that self-assessment includes he has to calculate his output tax liability. He has to claim the input tax credit which is available to him, and the net tax which has to be paid in terms of Section 41, that is Section 49 and the relevant rules. Registered person, जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा, is registered. अब 49 वाला कहता है कि जब आप अपने टैक्स लायबिलिटी को डिस्चार्ज करोगे तो उसका एक मैनर है which you have to follow. पहले आप सेल्फ असेस टैक्स और अदर ड्यूज देंगे रिटर्न ऑफ प्रीवियस टैक्स पीरियड के, फिर आप सेल्फ असेस टैक्स और अदर ड्यूज देंगे करंट टैक्स पीरियड के, फिर कोई डिमांड निकली है तो उस पे देंगे. अब जो सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स है, दिस इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, क्योंकि onus is on me. If tomorrow I have not discharged my tax liability correctly, one can certainly say You are liable to pay the penalty because self-assessed tax, there is a deliberation on your part. You have not calculated the tax liability correctly. So I have to self-assess the tax, which is more a serious responsibility rather than a privilege given to me. Now, first important thing which we need to understand, self-assessed tax, which I am determining on my own assessment, can be recovered from the supplier of goods or services or both without going through the procedure as envisaged under section 73 and 74. अगर मेरी कोई सेल्फ असेस टैक्स है तो मुझे उसकी रिकवरी डायरेक्टली मेरे अकाउंट से हो सकती है, मुझे डिपार्टमेंट को शो कॉज नोटिस देने की जरूरत नहीं है। 75(12) बड़ा क्लियरली ये कहता है। अब सेल्फ असेस टैक्स की डेफिनेशन अभी थोड़ी सी ब्रॉडन भी कर दी गई, जहां उन्होंने ये कहा कि वंस यू आर डिक्लेयरिंग योर टैक्स लायबिलिटी इन जीएसटीआर 1 और उसको जब आप 3B में रिटर्न भरते हैं और उस टर्नओवर से कम टर्नओवर लेते हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल मैंने जीएसटीआर 1 में 1000 रुपए की सेल दिखाई एंड आई एम शोइंग लेट अस से 900 रुपीस सेल्स इन माय 3B, देन दैट 100 रुपीस which is being short reflected in 3B as my turnover and the tax due thereon, let us say 180 rupees, that becomes a self-assessed tax which can be recovered without following the procedure of 73, 74. But ऐसा नहीं, there is already a judgment of Karnataka High Court and other high courts which have already approved this even prior to this amendment and change in the definition of self-assessed tax. So 75 section, which is very important, subsection 12 में यही deal कर रहा हूँ because there are 13 subclauses. So rest we will deal when we will come to adjudication. So this is relevant here, so I am dealing relevant provision here. दूसरी self-assessed tax में क्या problem है? Self-assessed tax में दूसरी problem क्या है? एक section 80 है हमारे यहाँ, जो ये कहता है कि you can make an application to the commissioner for payment of tax in installment. तो कमिश्नर आपके पोजीशन को कंसिडर करते हुए he can give you an opportunity to pay the tax in installment not exceeding 24, but of course subject to payment of interest also. And once you default in making tax, then obviously there is no doubt about that the whole amount becomes due to the department. सेल्फ असेस टैक्स में सेक्शन 80 में बड़ा क्लियरली लिखा है कि सेल्फ असेस टैक्स की एक और प्रॉब्लम है, और ये प्रॉब्लम है कि आप उसमें इंस्टॉलमेंट नहीं करवा सकते. आर यू गेटिंग मी? यू कैन नॉट गो फॉर इंस्टॉलमेंट सो फॉर ए सेक्शन इज कंसर्न. देन there is a compulsory penalty in terms of section 73 subsection 11. 73 और 74 में दोनों में 11 सबसेक्शन है. 11 सेक्शन 73 और 74 का डिफरेंट है. अभी हम सिर्फ 73 की बात कर रहे हैं क्योंकि 73 is applicable when this non-payment, short payment, etc. is not due to fraud, willful misstatement or suppression. तो वहां वो ये कहता है कि इररिस्पेक्टिव ऑफ द फैक्ट कि आपने पेमेंट करी नहीं करी, 73(5) का बेनिफिट लिया, 73(8) का बेनिफिट लिया या नहीं लिया, ये बड़ा क्लियर है. If you have not paid the self-assessed tax or the amount collected as tax from the supplier and failed to pay beyond 3 months, then there is a compulsory penalty of 10% of the tax. तो सेल्फ असेस टैक्स का एक ये तीसरा एंगल है which you need to understand. Number 1, as I told you, direct recovery under section 79 without following the procedure of show cause notice under section 73, 74. Number 2, no facility for payment of tax in installment. Number 3, as I told you, there is a compulsory penalty under section 73(11). अब अगर हम बात करें penalty की, तो then there is a judgment of Malayalam Motors Limited, Kerala High Court, 2/2010 TMI 761, wherein they have given the permission to pay the tax in installment even in the case of self-assessed tax. दोस्तों, मैं ये बता देना चाहता हूँ, हाई कोर्ट और सुप्रीम कोर्ट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल कोर्ट है. Up to tribunal, appellate authority and tribunal, they are statutory quasi-judicial proceedings, authorities, and tribunal is a court, but it is a statutory court which cannot go beyond the mandate of the act. High Court and Supreme Court, they can go beyond the mandate of the act on the principle of natural justice, on the principle of equity, on discrimination under Article 14, 19, and all other things. So therefore, you all must be knowing, and I'm sure you are knowing it, that all the provisions which are being challenged as unconstitutional or against the statutory provisions are being challenged only in the high courts, not under tribunal. That power has been given only to the high courts. तो वहां उन्होंने कह दिया आप दे दो, but then looking to the COVID circumstances, और ये भी कह दिया it should not be treated as a precedent because it was a unparalleled in the history of mankind that such kind of a COVID has come, so he has not been able to pay the tax. But whether that judgment can be used in other judgments, in my humble submission, no. It is based on the peculiar circumstances, in fact, by the Constitutional Court. Up to tribunal, undoubtedly, you cannot get any benefit. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा था, सेल्फ असेस टैक्स में अब डेफिनेशन को अमेंड कर दिया गया और ये भी कहा गया कि द टर्नओवर व्हिच हैज बीन डिक्लेयर्ड इन जीएसटी 1 बट नॉट रिपोर्टेड इन 3B इज आल्सो ए सेल्फ असेस टैक्स. बट उससे पहले मध्य प्रदेश हाई कोर्ट ने कबीर रियलिटी प्राइवेट लिमिटेड में 2019-12 TMI 48 में पहले ही कह दिया था कि once you are declaring your liability and you are not paying tax, then certainly you can, you are liable to pay tax. So friends, ये सेल्फ असेसमेंट है जिसकी हम बात कर रहे थे, वो मुझे सेक्शन 39 में डिस्चार्ज करनी है और जो मुझे पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स करनी है उसके लिए सेक्शन 41, 49 दोनों को ध्यान में रखना. IGST liability IGST credit can be used for the payment of any tax, but CGST and SGST cannot be used for discharge of liability against each other. So all those parameters also need to be taken into consideration. Now the question is, when I am making late payment of tax, am I liable to pay interest? Once I am filing my return, then I am liable to pay the interest. But on which amount? This issue has been subject to litigation, and there have been number of amendments which is being proposed in Section 50, and very recently in this Finance Bill 2020 also, which has become Act now, has also made a change in Section 50. The earlier dispute was, if I am self-assessing my tax, on which value I am liable to pay interest. Let us say my output tax liability is rupees 100. The credit available to me is 60 rupees. So am I liable to pay interest on 40 rupees or on 100 rupees? The department contention was you are liable to pay tax on 100. Of course, the matter went to various high courts, so I am not going to discuss those judgments. Then this law was amended and Section 50 was amended retrospectively. And now Section 50 is once again amended retrospectively to say that the rate of interest 24 is no more relevant. It is only 18% rate. So wherever you have paid the tax, where 24 rate of interest is applicable under Section 50 subsection 3, you can make a refund for that amount. And of course, if the demand comes today, then you can take a ground wherever the demand is proposed to be taxed at 24% interest, because the amendment is there. It is not being notified as yet, though it has become an act. We all understand. So for GST is concerned, these provisions will come into picture when they will be notified and the corresponding amendment has been made into the state legislature and union territory taxes also. So that is one part. Secondly, the amendment is being made that you're liable to pay tax only on the amount which you are making payment in cash. That means on net tax you are liable to pay the interest. But abhi bhi ek jagda khatam nahi hua. Still there is one dispute according to my understanding. And that dispute is, let us say my return becomes due to be filed on 20th of July. My tax liability is 100 rupees, but I don't have 100 rupees on that day. I'm only having 60 rupees. Can I pay 60 rupees in my cash ledger? And then I can say I'm liable to pay tax only on the differential amount of cash which I am making payment at the time of filing the return. Kindly appreciate. अगर आप देखेंगे तो कुछ केसेस में बहुत बड़ा अमाउंट बनता है और इसमें भी एक बड़ा अच्छा केस है, बड़ा अच्छा एक प्रोपोजिशन है which can be contested also. So friends, again I am repeating, मेरी रिटर्न 20 जुलाई को बनती है, मैंने 15 जुलाई को 60 रुपए जमा करा दिए और 40 रुपए जमा कराए 27 जुलाई को. क्या मुझे 40 रुपए पे ब्याज देना है 20 जुलाई से 27 जुलाई का, या मुझे 100 रुपए पे देना है? डिपार्टमेंट की कंटेंशन है आपको 100 रुपए पे देना है. मेरी अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, अगर आप सेक्शन 49 सबसेक्शन 8 पढ़ेंगे तो वहां बड़ा क्लियरली लिखा है व्हाट इज द डेट ऑफ पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स, the day when the amount has been deposited to the debitory of bank account. So I have already lost my liquidity. That money has gone to the government exchequer. Interest is compensatory in nature. So why should I pay interest on 100 rupees for 7 days? And why shouldn't I pay interest only on 40 rupees because 60 has already been paid? So there is no provision in law, and the department contention is that because the appropriation comes in 3B only, so till that time it was only a deposit and the money has not accrued to the government. I don't agree with that. Looking to subsection 8 of section 49, which clearly says that the date of payment from your bank account is the date of payment of tax. So once you are able to utilize that money and interest is compensatory in nature, how can you ask me to pay the interest? So this issue still is in dispute. But friends, that's the government has been made it very clear that you're liable to pay tax only on self-assessed tax, net tax. So those issues and the rate of interest from the date of notification will be 18%. So these are good relief which are being given. Now, friends, I am coming to the second kind of assessment, and that is being called provisional assessment under section 60. This section is always there. In service tax also, it was there in excise also. Wherever you have not been able to determine the value of goods or the rate of tax which is applicable, you can request the proper officer to determine the rate or the value, and accordingly he will make a provisional assessment. He will permit you to make the provisional payment of tax subject to execution of a bond and surety for the difference amount which can be there as a tax liability if finally your tax liability determines to be more. And then that officer has to decide your application for provisional assessment within 90 days from the date of receipt. As I told you, subject to payment of bond and surety. And of course, this payment is subject to interest. And in case there is a refund due to you, then you are entitled to claim the refund also. Now, friends, the question comes, and you will appreciate if these two situations, need I go for provisional assessment under section 60, or I can go to authority of advance ruling and seek his ruling with regard to the value of tax and rate of tax? Because once you go to authority of advance ruling, then there are a number of issues on which that authority is bound to answer as stated in section 97. which include these two situations also. So that means in these two situations, you have got two options. Either you can go to Authority of Advanced Ruling or you can go to Provisional Assessment Authority. In my humble opinion, one should not go and follow any of these. Authority of Advanced Ruling is all judicial. These are all officers, bureaucrats. No judicial person is on the board. Either it is Appellate Authority or Authority of Advanced Ruling. In one case, it is up to Joint Commissioner, other case, maybe Chief Commissioner, but in any case, they are all bureaucrats. You can determine the liability and subsequently you can issue a debit note in case the demand is more and issue a credit note, etc. Of course, there are certain time limit attached with debit and credit note under Section 34. But somewhere there is a government and the government says, no, we want to go for provisional assessment. We don't want to take any chances. So there you have to go for it. But in both the situation, you have got two options. Either you go to Authority of Advanced Ruling or you can opt for provisional assessment. In the case of provisional assessment, the problem is that my final assessment is to be done. And most of the commercial entities don't want to go for assessment before the authorities. Once it is self-assessment, they say once we'll go for provisional, you will do my final assessment, you will ask for number of documents and then you will raise number of other issues also. So that is the reason I have not seen much of its utilization so long as service tax is concerned. And even in GST also, we have hardly gone for this provisional assessment. Looking to the time constraint, I'm not going into the procedure, which form you have to file, which form he has to give an answer. So that procedure has already been given in Rule 98. You can follow that and you can do it. But as per my humble understanding, we should not go for provisional assessment. Rather, even I don't suggest for Authority of Advanced Ruling unless otherwise there are compelling reasons. The contract is more, the things are, high stakes are there. It's a government body who want to be sure about the law and they say, no, you please go for it. Let us hear the department, etc. So barring those, one should not go for it. Now, friends, I'm coming to the very important section and the provision which is currently in use and for which the department has issued a SOP only couple of days down the line. And this is called Scrutiny of Return. If you look at subsection 1, it says the proper officer may, of course, they have given the parameter for selection of cases for scrutiny, but of course, the law has said may scrutinize the return and related particulars furnished by the registered person. Obviously, scrutiny of return उसी की हो सकती है जो रिटर्न फाइल करता है, रिटर्न फाइल करने की जिम्मेवारी सिर्फ रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन पे, टैक्सेबल पे नहीं है. To verify the correctness of return and inform him of any discrepancy, as I told you, in Form ASMT 10. Departmental authorities, that means the proper officer, does not have any power to call for any information from the assessee under this section. He has to simply scrutinize the return and related particulars. Return is 3B or final return. Related particulars may be GSTR 1, your 9C e-way bill, GSTR 1 submitted by the suppliers. So there can be number of other information which is available to him. So in case he finds that you have either not paid the tax or short paid the tax, or you have wrongly availed or utilized any credit or any refund has been erroneously claimed by you, he can serve you ASMT 10. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा था कि ये असेसमेंट इनकम टैक्स से डिफरेंट है, अब इसको थोड़ा सा समझेंगे. ASMT 10 देने के बाद he will already predetermine if this is the issue on which he is seeking clarification. First of all, in my humble opinion, it is a beneficial provision for the assessors or the suppliers simply because a discrepancy has come to the knowledge of the department, and somehow, if it is a genuine mistake, then you're getting an opportunity to pay the tax and interest without attracting any penalty, number one. Number two, without increasing the scope of interest when the show cause notice will come after 4 years or 5 years. So now you're getting an opportunity where you can rectify your mistake if it is there. And if that being so, you will reply in ASMT 10, yes, I admit this is a mistake. Discharge the liability along with interest in DRC 03. Then the proper officer will issue you ASMT 12, which is a conclusion of the proceedings. You have to file the reply within 30 days, etc. Time limit, I am on the basic principles, simply looking to the time constraint because I have to cover a lot ground to reach at the adjudication and finalize it. So friends, in nutshell, if you give an explanation and says to the department that your viewpoint is incorrect because of this provision of law, this is case law, etc., and he agrees with it, he again issue ASMT 12. So ASMT 12 means settlement between the department and the SSC. No proceeding with regard to that issue will be further continued, and no show cause notice will be issued. But then normally it is not so. Normally, if you look at it, we will never agree with the department will never agree with us. Then what will happen? I have filed ASMT 11 stating my position that I have availed the credit and I am satisfying all the conditions of section 16, etc. There is nothing which is liable to be reversed. He says, no, you are liable to be reversed. There is a fake invoice. I don't agree with that. Simply because you are saying it is fake, I don't agree with that. In that case, what will happen? He will not issue you ASMT 12. So whether any demand has been created against you? No. Issuance of ASMT 10 means there is no demand which is being created. So in order where there is no agreement between the SSC and the department, they will serve you a show cause notice under section 73 or section 74 as the case may be. So this assessment doesn't create any demand, unlike income tax assessment where the whole demand becomes due to the department unless others go and appeal and take a stay and all that thing. Recovery proceeding started. Here the demand ही create नहीं होती. It is only a ground for issuance of a show cause notice. So don't worry, if ASMT 10 has come, department doesn't agree with you, you're not liable to pay anything. He will serve you a show cause notice, you will respond to that show cause notice, then adjudication will be done, and then the demand will realize. And as I told you, even if the demand is there, you have to pay only 10% of the tax, forget about interest and penalty, and your whole demand is being stayed. Am I clear? So kindly appreciate now the difference between assessment under income tax law. अब रिटर्न भी डिफाइन किए हुए, रिटर्न में आपके 39 की रिटर्न हो सकती है, जैसे मैं आपको कहा आपको एनुअल रिटर्न हो सकती है, सेक्शन 44 में फाइनल रिटर्न हो सकती है, 45 में स्टेटमेंट्स हो सकती हैं, बाकी इंफॉर्मेशन हो सकती है, डजंट मैटर, बट ही कैन नॉट कॉल्ड फॉर एनी अदर इंफॉर्मेशन. He has to only look at the information which is already available with the record. No inquiry, no investigation. मैंने आपसे क्या कहा था कि adjudication process is very lengthy and give ample time to the supplier to arrange its affair. So by doing so, that is giving you an opportunity, and if there is an inadvertent bona fide error, that's a golden opportunity. You must grab it. Pay the tax and interest only up to the date. And don't wait for the show cause notice when it will be demand of 5 years, which will become almost equivalent to the amount of tax, 18 into 5, 90%. So friends, with this, I am just concluding ASMT 61. Oh, sorry, scrutiny of returns. But then, what are the possible reasons? If you go to that circular which has come from the department, there can be a difference between your GSTR 1 and 3B. There can be a difference between the credit available in 2A, 2B versus 3B. There can be a difference in the rate of tax. There can be a difference between your reconciliation of the revenue recorded in the books of accounts and other things. So many things are there. There can be a difference between the revenue reported in e-way bill, e-invoices, and your GSTR1. So all these things, he can look at it, and there can be 12 reasons as per that standard procedure. So I'm not touching that because I thought in case I will take, then it will take a lot of time. Yes, excess availment of some of the important grounds I have already told you. I can again tell you, excess availment of ITC is one of the main ground. Short payment output is आपका 26 AS में इतना रिटर्न था, आपके यहाँ GST 3B में इतनी टर्नओवर है. 26 years, there may be certain receipt which is subject to deduction of tax at source income tax. They may not be subject to tax under. एक डॉक्टर को आप फीस देते हैं, आपको उसका TDS कटेगा, पर क्या where doctor is providing you medical services liable to pay the GST. So that can be one of the reasons. Then there can be the provision wherein you are being allowed to utilize only 99% of credit for discharge of your liability. You might have utilized the 100%. Availment of credit is the main criteria. So some of the verification aspect, he has to look at it. Again, I am requesting all the professionals, kindly understand the officer power is very limited under this section. AMC does not create any demand. It is a beneficial provision for the SSC. He can certainly avail if there is a bona fide mistake. But in case you are taken a stand which is different than the stand as applicable to the department, one need not challenge it. There are situations now, the S10 is coming, your supplier are not paid the tax, you are not entitled for the, you are not followed Rule 36(4). So these kind of 11, 12 instances are there, which has been given, which I think one must look at it. And then secondly, you can do this to verify the correctness of return. What is the correctness of return? We all understand. But there is a Supreme Court judgment which has defined the term correctness in the case of Union and India Others versus Naresh Chandra, where they say correctness means it is correct legally as well as proprietary. So that means all legal aspects, all provisions, he can look at it and then he can do it. Now I'll just summarize. There is no scope of investigation by the proper officer under Section 61. If there is a disagreement between the SSC and the department, he has no option but to issue the department. There can be n number of reasons on the basis of which he is serving you the show cause notice. Kindly go through your record, your accounting master, and everything can be done. Now, friends, after this, now I am coming to two best judgment assessment. And again, very important thing, which I would like to repeat, though I have already stated, but I would like to repeat it for the sake of repetition. AS 10 does not create any demand. If there is an agreement between the SSC and the department, AS 12 will be issued, no proceeding. But in case of disagreement, no demand is being created. He has to serve a show cause notice. After adjudication, demand will be there, and by following the appellate procedure, you have to pay only 10% of the tax in dispute at the first appellate stage and 20% of the tax at second appellate stage. Now, friends, there are two best judgment assessment. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा कि 73-74 में बड़ा लंबा टाइम लगता था, तो सरकार ने अब दो सिचुएशन और निकाल ली, जिसमें उन्होंने कहा कि हम आपकी बेस्ट जजमेंट असेसमेंट कर सकते हैं. And if you look at Section 62(1), which deals with the non-registered persons, तो वो क्या कहता है? Notwithstanding anything contained in Section 73-74, if there is a conflict between the provision of 73-74, जैसे मैंने कहा, you have to serve me the show cause notice for recovery of this amount, तो उन्होंने कहा कोई बात नहीं. अगर 62(1) के प्रोविजन में और 73-74 के प्रोविजन में अगर कहीं कोई मिसमैच है, तो कौन सा प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल होगा, कौन सा प्रोविजन प्रिवेल करेगा? 62. Now, when this assessment can be done, where a registered person, again applicable to registered person only, fails to furnish the return under Section 39, or section 35. That means if you fail to file return under 39, that is 3B, or final return, 44 is not the criteria, 44 की जो annual return है, that is not the basis for best judgment assessment. And for the purpose of making the best judgment assessment, the officer is duty bound to serve you a notice under section 46. 46 क्या notice है? Notice to return defaulter. आपको पहले वो notice देगा before he invoke this section 62 for the purpose of making best judgment assessment. And then he will determine the tax liability to the best of his judgment, considering all the relevant information available to him. Kindly see this best judgment assessment जो आप income tax में देखते हैं और यहाँ बहुत फर्क है. Income tax में best judgment assessment में he has to make a wild guess looking to the material supplied by you. पर यहाँ assessing officer के पास बहुत सारा material available है. For example, GSTR 1 which has been filed by your supplier, 2A, 2B is with him. So in case he is creating a demand by assessing best judgment assessment under this section where you are registered person and failed to file the return, then he has to consider that credit also. And once that credit, etc., all information will be given. So here the power is not as wide and the guess cannot be as wide as it can be income tax. Here he has to utilize all the information. So most of the information with regard to credit is available to him. So let us say you want to assess me at ₹100 and there's a liability of 18 rupees and there's a credit lying in my 2A or 2B, let us say 10 rupees. So then that credit has to be considered for the purpose of making judgment. अब subsection 2 इसका बड़ा interesting है सर. It says जहां आपने valid return file कर दी within 30 days from the date of service of assessment order, उसने best judgment assessment कर दी, उसके बाद within 30 days you have filed a valid return, then in terms of this subsection the order will automatically be deemed to have been withdrawn. क्या कहीं इनकम टैक्स पे ऐसा कोई प्रोविजन है कि आपकी बेस्ट जजमेंट असेसमेंट हो जाए 144 में, उस ऑर्डर को विड्रॉ करवा सको? यहाँ तो ये कह रहा है कि उसने पहले तो आपको 46 का नोटिस देगा डिफॉल्टर का, वार्निंग दी, फिर उसने वार्निंग देने के बाद आपने फिर भी रिटर्न नहीं भरी, उसने बेस्ट जजमेंट असेसमेंट कर दी, उसके बाद आपने रिटर्न भर दी विद इन 30 डेज, और उसके बाद अगर 30 डेज में भर दी तो भी ये deemed to have been withdrawn. And once it is being deemed to have been withdrawn, then certainly there is no demand being created. But yes, if you have not filed the return even within 30 days after the passing of that order, then it becomes a demand recoverable from you. And because this section is a non-obstinate clause to section 73 and 74, then you have to follow the appellate procedure or revisional authority procedure from here itself. Am I clear? So that is the difference. अब यहाँ सबसे बड़ा जो difference आपने देखा कि अगर मैं रिटर्न फाइल कर देता हूँ तो मेरी डिमांड ऑटोमेटिकली, वो असेसमेंट ऑर्डर ऑटोमेटिकली इनवैलिड हो जाते हैं, and I am not going to the case law with regard to the best judgment assessment, Supreme Court, etc. Looking to the time constraint. Now I am coming to the second best judgment assessment, which is under section 63. We have already done self-assessment 59. We have already done provisional assessment under section 60. We have already done 61. I am repeating scrutiny of returns, ASMT 10, we have dealt in detail. Then we have already done 62, that is best judgment assessment in the case of persons who are not filing the return. And this is the another best judgment assessment under section 63, which is applicable in the case of registered person or a person whose registration has been cancelled but is liable to pay the tax. So that means any person who is liable to pay the tax but failed to get himself registered or surrender his number and continue to liable to pay the tax, in these cases this section 63 can be invoked, and this section on the similar line of 62 starts with the non-obstant clause, notwithstanding anything contained in section 73 or 74. So he has to complete this assessment within 5 years from the due date of filing the annual return. There's a time limit. You cannot go unlimited period. This time limit is similar to the issuance of adjudication process under section 74. So there cannot be any assessment or adjudication 5 years from the due date of filing the return. अब एक्चुअल में अगर ड्यू डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग द रिटर्न एक्सटेंड होती रहती है, जो हम करवाते रहते हैं, हमारी हमेशा बात होती है लास्ट रोड में करो, अगर हमें एक्सटेंड ना करवा के उसकी रेमिशन ऑफ पेनल्टी की बात करनी चाहिए, पर डेट एक्सटेंड करा देते हैं, तो उससे डिपार्टमेंट को और टाइम मिल जाता है टू इन्वोक दिस सेक्शंस एंड कंप्लीट दिस असेसमेंट. फॉर एग्जांपल 17-18 की आपकी एनुअल रिटर्न एक्सटेंड हुई 5 या 6 फरवरी तक. 5-6 फरवरी 2020, 5-6 फरवरी 2020 का मतलब है नाउ दे हैव टू कंप्लीट द असेसमेंट बाय 5th और 6th फरवरी 2025. नहीं तो वो 17-18 वाली असेसमेंट 31 दिसंबर 18 को होती, तो ये 31 दिसंबर 23 को टाइम बार्ड हो गया होता. तो अब अगले साल से कुछ टाइम बार्ड का प्रोसेस शुरू हो जाता. बट अभी 17-18 के लिए सरकार के पास अनदर 1.5 ईयर. सो ये बस जजमेंट असेसमेंट है टैक्सेबल पर्सन की. उसमें ये कहा गया कि भैया तुम करोगे नहीं उसको अपॉर्चुनिटी देने के बिना, वो तो ठीक है, प्रिंसिपल आपने फॉलो कर लिया. ये असेसमेंट में डिपार्टमेंट को थोड़ी सी डिफिकल्टी है एज कंपेयर टू 62. When we go to 62, which is applicable for registered person on non-filing of return, we are having lot more information. For example, GSTR1 आपका GSTR नंबर डालेगा ना, वो तो उसको पता चल जाएगा आपने किस किस नंबर से कितनी कितनी परचेज की हुई. On that basis, it is easier for him to assess. But when it comes to section 63, where he is relying upon the third-party information, and because you are not registered, then any purchase made by you will not come to the system at all. और अगर मान लिया आपने उसको ले भी लिया और आप रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है तो B2C में आएगी. तो B2C की जो सेल है वो भी एक एंट्री वाइज नहीं है, बिल वाइज नहीं है, वो कंसोलिडेटेड फिगर है. वहां से सेग्रीगेट करना कि इसमें मेरी कितनी फिगर है, that will not be available. So 63 is a different cup of tea, but yes, the department has already had this provision. And then 62 or 63 हमने deal कर लिया. Now we are coming to the last section of assessment. After that, we will have question answer session with regard to assessment, and then we will start adjudication. Section 64, summary assessment with certain special cases. मुझे नहीं पता कलकत्ता का क्या पोजीशन है, बट दिल्ली में मेरे पास 61 के नोटिस आ चुके हैं, 62 की असेसमेंट आ चुकी है, 63 की आ चुकी है, पर 64 की आज तक नहीं आई, क्योंकि इस सेक्शन में जितनी कंडीशंस लगाई गई हैं उसको सेटिस्फाई करना भी मुश्किल है. राधे किशन इंडस्ट्रीज सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट, which is in the context of blocking of credit and movable property, has clearly stated, once you have to record the reason to believe, then that reason must be based on some cogent material, not on surmises. So what does this section talk about? Summary assessment, and that too applicable in certain specified situation. Number one, the proper officer may, on any evidence, evidence is a strong term rather than reason to believe, he should have some evidence showing a tax liability of a person to his notice. चलिए आपके पास एक, आपके ऑफिसर के पास एक वो एविडेंस मिल गया, उसको कहीं को डॉक्यूमेंट मिल गया. Then he has to take the previous permission of additional commissioner or joint commissioner. Then he has to prove that I have to invoke this section. I cannot go for 73-74 because if I go to 73-74, interest of the revenue will be suffered. It will take such a long time, and this person will run away. So, in order to protect the revenue, evidence अलग चीज है जो आपके पास होना चाहिए. Then you have to prove that in order to protect the revenue, you have to issue an assessment order. You must have sufficient ground to believe that any delay in invoking the provision of this section will harm the interest of revenue. इतनी सारी conditions हैं जिसकी वजह से ये section ज़्यादा अभी use नहीं हो रहा है. Here, not only you have to have a conclusive evidence, you have to seek permission of the additional commissioner, joint commissioner. You have to place on record the material that it is necessary to invoke this section to protect the interest of revenue. In case I don't use this section, there is likelihood of damage to the interest of revenue to a great extent. Then only this section can be invoked and he can frame the assessment. Then this also provides that the taxable person to whom the liability pertains is not ascertainable, and such liability pertains to the sale of supply of goods. Then the person who is in charge of the goods is being treated as the person who is the owner, and on that basis, the assessment can be framed. Now we are coming to subsection 2. After passing this order, अब देखिए इनकम टैक्स में कभी ऐसा होता है असेसमेंट में, अब इसको सुनिएगा बड़े ध्यान से. After passing order under this subsection 1, application can be made by a taxable person within 30 days from the date of the order to say that this order is erroneous. Then the department officer can look at that application. If he considers the contentions are correct, then he has to withdraw the order which has been passed under section 64, and he has to serve you the show cause notice under section 73 or 74. That means even if you have framed the assessment under section 64, there is still 30 days time. You can write to the authority that this order is erroneous. Of course, he cannot rectify, but he can withdraw the order. And after withdrawing, he realizes, no, no, my galti ho gayi, then he has to follow the procedure under section 73 or 74. This is a very exceptional power being given in very exceptional cases, particularly जहाँ fake invoices के issues हैं, पार्टी के भागने का डर है, इन तरह की situation में ये section use हो सकता है, and this section is not withstanding anything to 73, 74, उससे non-obstant clause भी नहीं है, ये independent है section, और within after passing the order, this order can be withdrawn also within 30 days. आप समझ सकते हैं कि मेरा इशारा किस तरफ. With this, I am just concluding my topic with regard to assessment. Yes, before I conclude, I just want to mention one section which I think we all professionals need to look at very carefully, and that is section 160. Assessment proceedings not to be invalidated on certain grounds. So they say in case he is serving a notice where there's some clerical mistake, some inadvertent error or provision or any notice, etc., then on those technical grounds, those orders will not be nullified. But what is really important is subsection 2 of this section, which says that if you have been served with a notice and you have already acted upon it without challenging the validity of that notice, you have participated, then you cannot challenge that notice. Any notice on which you have already acted upon, you cannot challenge that this notice was illegal. In case you want to challenge the validity of that notice, either jurisdiction wise or legality wise or whatever reasons, you have to challenge it prior to this. So with this, I have concluded section 59 to 64 and section 160, which is relevant to it. I will just summarize in 4 or 5 minutes so that it can recapitulate in your mind what we have discussed. We have discussed what is assessment and adjudication, what is the difference between the two. Assessment is making a judgment, adjudication is resolving a dispute. Assessment provisions are being contained from section 59 to 64. 59 deals with the self-assessment, wherein that amount can be recovered without following the procedure of adjudication. No facility of installment is being given. Interest to be paid on the net tax value. Then there is a provisional assessment. This facility can be availed in authority of advance ruling also. But here again, it can be used only in 2 situations: when the value of supply or the rate of tax is not determinable. Barring that, you cannot go for provisional assessment. You have to execute bond and file surety. Bond amount cannot, surety amount cannot be more than 25% of the bond. It is subject to payment of interest. And once you have opted for this provisional assessment, your final assessment will certainly be done. Then we have discussed section 61, which is scrutiny of return, wherein issuance of AS-7010 does not create any demand. In case of disagreement, show cause notice is to be issued. In case of agreement, AS-7012 will be issued. Then we have discussed two best judgment assessment. One in the case of non-filer of return, which you can file the return after the order, that order will be tipped up in return. Third is in the case of taxable person. Then we had a 64 special scrutiny in special cases, where after passing the order, once again, he can withdraw the same after, if you can prove that this order is erroneous and you apply to the proper officer. And once he withdraw the order and he want to realize the amount, then he has to serve you the show cause notice. This is how the assessment procedure is there. With this, I'm concluding my part of assessment. Now, any question with regard to assessment, you're most welcome.
Friends, if you have any question with respect to assessment, you can raise your hand, we can unmute you, can ask question directly. Sir, एक question chat box में आया हुआ था. I'll just repeat. Whether unregistered person will get ITC on assessment or not? I think
बिल्कुल नहीं सर. अगर आप section 16 पढ़ेंगे तो it starts with every registered person. पहले तीन वर्ड section 16(1) में अगर आप पढ़ेंगे तो this section starts with every registered person. This was not the scenario in pre-GST era, wherein the registration was not the requirement. Service tax में अगर कोई आपकी डिमांड निकलती है और आप क्रेडिट के लिए एंटाइटल्ड है, तो उस क्रेडिट का, उसको ITC का आपको क्रेडिट मिलता है. GST में दोहरी मार है, डबल मार है. काइंडली अप्रिशिएट, अगर आप 30 आपका क्लाइंट लायबल हो गया रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए और आपने विद इन 30 डेज नहीं अप्लाई किया, तो आप कंसिक्वेंसी समझ सकते हैं. आउटपुट टैक्स लायबिलिटी तो आपको देनी पड़ेगी बिकॉज यू आर अ टैक्सेबल पर्सन, और आपको क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा बिकॉज यू आर रजिस्टर्ड ओनली फ्रॉम द डे व्हेन यू आर मेकिंग एन एप्लीकेशन. फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ रजिस्ट्रेशन, व्हाटएवर supplies will be procured, you will be entitled for the credit only on that. So this is a very dangerous situation, and it was applicable in VAT. It was not applicable so far as excise and service tax is concerned, लेकिन VAT में भी क्रेडिट जो है रजिस्टर्ड डीलर को ही मिलता था. मुझे वेस्ट बंगाल का नहीं पता, बट आई एम श्योर इन दी VAT it was there, and I am sure it must be the situation in West Bengal also.
और एक question, how to make
एक क्वेरी मैं देख रहा हूँ नवीन जी, एक मिनट जी सर. कैन डिपार्टमेंट कहाँ चली गई? जस्ट can department do scrutiny for cases where department audit was completed for 17, 18, 18, 19? देखिए, ऑडिट का मतलब ये नहीं है कि आपको क्लीन चिट मिल गई, आप 24 कैरेट के हो गए. आप इनकम टैक्स में जानते हैं, आप स्क्रूटनी असेसमेंट भी कर लेते हैं तो 148 भी होता है, 263 भी होता है, सर्च भी होती है. तो ऑडिट का मतलब ये नहीं है. इफ देयर इज स्टिल ए मिस्टेक एंड दैट इज अपरेंट ऑन रिकॉर्ड, without investigation, he can do scrutiny of return, and it is in your interest because, as I told you, 17/18 is going to be time barred in February 2025. अभी बहुत टाइम है डिपार्टमेंट के पास, बिकॉज 17/18 की एनुअल रिटर्न काफी देर तक एक्सटेंड होती रही, तो इसलिए डिपार्टमेंट कैन डू इट. आप कुछ कह रहे थे नवीन जी, आप एक क्वेश्चन पढ़ रहे थे. आप अनम्यूट करें अपने आप को. नवीन जी, आप म्यूटेड हो गए.
जी सर. सर, इसके ऊपर में एल गोपाल शाह जी का है. इज आस्किंग हाउ टू मेक पेमेंट अंडर प्रोटेस्ट, एनी प्रोसीजर इन जीएसटी लॉ, एंड हाउ टू इन्फॉर्म डिपार्टमेंट दैट वी हैव मेड पेमेंट अंडर प्रोटेस्ट.
वेरी गुड क्वेश्चन.
शुड वी आस्क फॉर एन ऑर्डर और शुड वी गो फॉर अपील?
देखिए, अंडर प्रोटेस्ट जो पेमेंट है वो with their right to reserve the litigation है, without admitting the liability. अब under protest payment क्यों करते हैं? Let us say fake invoices है, he is having very clinching evidences, और आपके ऊपर प्रेशर भी है कि आप जमा कराएं, कहीं अमाउंट बहुत ज्यादा है, 5 करोड़ से ऊपर है, आप अरेस्ट हो सकते हैं, तो आप वैसे 1 करोड़ जमा कराना चाहते हैं कि चलो लेस देन 5 करोड़ आएगा, अरेस्ट तो बचेगा. So wherever you are making a payment which you are not admitting, you can pay the tax in DRC 03 and write a letter. That specimen letter जो हम पहले सर्विस टैक्स में लिखते थे, वहां अंडर प्रोटेस्ट डिपार्टमेंट के प्रोसीजर्स में था, लॉ में कहीं नहीं था, अभी भी नहीं है. बट अंडर प्रोटेस्ट का मतलब यही है कि आई एम नॉट एडमिटिंग माई लायबिलिटी, आई एम पेइंग दिस अमाउंट ऑफ टैक्स टू बाय मेंटल पीस एंड टू अवॉइड द इंटरेस्ट लायबिलिटी इफ एनी, if it arises, but I want to contest it. So you have to simply write a letter to the jurisdictional officer. I have made this much of payment through DRC 03 and I am not admitting this. This payment may be considered as a payment under protest. I am not admitting the tax liability and I am reserving my right to contest the same. अगर आपने ये लेटर नहीं लिखी तो जैसे अभी मैं एडजुडिकेशन में आऊंगा तो आपको पता चलेगा कि उसमें ये हो सकता है कि वो आपको शो कॉज ही ना करे और उसके बहुत सीरियस इंप्लीकेशन हो सकते हैं. तो जहां आपने उसको लिटिगेट करना है, वो किसी प्रेशर में आप पैसे जमा करवा रहे हैं या आपको लगता है कि यार ये वाकई रेट ऑफ टैक्स का झगड़ा कल को हो सकता है, आज मैं पैसे जमा करा देता हूं, बट आई वांट टू कंटेस्ट, सब्सिक्वेंटली इफ आई विन आई विल गेट दैट मनी बैक. क्योंकि अगर आपने किसी आइटम पे 18% टैक्स लगता था और आपने 12 जमा करा दिया है, तो ट्रांजेक्शन तो खत्म हो गई, उस आदमी को तो टैक्स देना नहीं है. तो जहां कहीं भी किसी भी वजह से आप पेमेंट अंडर प्रोटेस्ट करवा रहे हैं, तो you have to simply write a letter quoting the details of payment of tax, DRC3, etc., by stating that I am not admitting my liability, I am reserving my right to litigate the matter. So that will give a signal to the department they cannot appropriate that money to the government exchequer and they have to serve you a show cause notice positively. So this money will lie as a deposit with the department and they cannot appropriate it. So it's something like where you have received any money and credited to your liability account. Tomorrow, in case you're liable to be, you'll pay it. So that money is to protect the interest of revenue. But certainly, if you win the case, that money will come back to you along with interest, which is 6% right now.
Yeah, L. Gopal ji, your question was answered. आपको कुछ और query है तो you can, I'm unmuting, you can ask.
Yes. Good evening, Ashok sir.
गोपाल जी कैसा है, बड़े दिनों बाद दिखाई दिए.
Yes, sir.
Gopal ji came to Delhi and is joined my office for a couple of days to get an experience. How do we practice? तो इन्होंने हमारे यहाँ कुछ महीने शायद 1-1.5 महीना काम किया है.
Yes, sir. It was a great experience, sir. उसी का ही practice अभी कर रहा हूँ.
चलिए बताएं सर.
सर ये अगर वो लेटर खाली सिंपल लिख देने से they are not issuing the so cause, तो सर उसके लिए how can we get the so cause and then
क्या जरूरत है, प्रिफर्ड की एप्लीकेशन लगाओ ना.
Sir?
Once the show cause notice time is over, you file an application for refund. You say I have paid this money in protest. There is no show cause notice issued to me. Now this amount need to be refunded to me because there is no demand created against that. So you can file an application for refund.
तो वो लेटर खाली जाके वहाँ सबमिट कर देना है.
प्रूफ जरूर रखना है. आप मेल पे भी भेजें, वहाँ ऑफिस में जाके एक्नॉलेज भी करा लें और अगर हो सके तो उसको रजिस्टर्ड एडी भी डाल दें.
That is the only proof of submitting the under protest.
Absolutely. There are a number of ample case law to support our case.
They are bound to issue so cause notice.
They are duty bound. In case they don't issue, then that money will become refund to me, and we have claimed refund in certain cases.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopalji. You can mute yourself. So another question is from Kishan Mittalji. ITC is blocked by simply an email information being provided on 28 January 22 and again on 15 March 22.
देखिए ये ITC ब्लॉक किया होगा रूल 86A कैपिटल में. उसमें they are not supposed to serve you the notice, but then let us understand certain peculiar feature with regard to the blockage of credit. First of all, it is not a recovery mechanism. It is only a mechanism to safeguard the interest of revenue, and that too only for 1 year period. If my account, my ITC is blocked, or alternatively, my bank account has been attached then after 1 year it will automatically get vacated. डिपार्टमेंट ने कहा है कि ऐसी आप एक फंक्शनैलिटी भी लाओ जीएसटी पोर्टल पे, और ये लॉ सेटल हो चुका है बहुत सारे हाई कोर्ट जजमेंट की फेवर में। इसमें और बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है कि यहाँ डिमांड नहीं क्रिएट होती, इसलिए रिकवरी प्रोसीजर नहीं है टू प्रोटेक्ट द इंटरेस्ट ऑफ रेवेन्यू। राधा किशन इंडस्ट्रीज सुप्रीम कोर्ट इज द लैंडमार्क जजमेंट which lays down what are the precautions which are to be taken by the proper officer, failing which this attachment will not be valid. उन्होंने बड़ा क्लियरली लिखा है, he has a sufficient reason to believe, and reason to believe is not presumption, assumption that is based on some cognate material, etc. So I will suggest you to go through that judgment, and in case your proper officer has not followed, then the only way is to go to the high court and get it vacated. इसमें जो आज तक का केस लॉ आया है उसमें कुछ चीजें बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग हैं और जो सेटल हो चुकी है। नंबर 1, if there is a credit balance of ₹100 in my credit ledger, he cannot block more than the amount for which the allegations are there that I have wrongly availed the credit. Let us assume that balance is that allegation is for ₹60. So my ₹100 cannot be blocked, only ₹60 can be blocked. And on that day, if there is a ₹20, then only ₹20 can be blocked. My subsequent ITC cannot be blocked. Third, there cannot be a negative entry. ऐसा नहीं है कि यहाँ बैलेंस नहीं था, नील आपने नेगेटिव कर दिया, लायबिलिटी में डाल दिया, उसके बाद जो मेरा क्रेडिट आ रहा है वो उसकी जगह एडजस्ट हो रहा है, वो भी नहीं हो सकता। फोर्थ, अगर आपका सीसी अकाउंट है या ओवरड्राफ्ट फैसिलिटी है, then it is not a mole property, it is a liability for you, it cannot be attached. Fifth, if there is a balance in the partner's account and there is a liability in the name of firm, LLP or company, even partner's account or family member accounts cannot be attached. These are the cases which have already been settled in various high court, and these are the principles. So now, because in 86A you feel he has not given you an opportunity and he has done it through email only, the only option available to you is to file a डेट बिफोर द हाई कोर्ट। बहुत सारी जजमेंट है, इमीडिएटली रिलीफ मिलेगा, पर डेट जरूर देख लीजिए। आपने डेट कौन सी बताई थी, बताइए इन्होंने
डेट्स उन्होंने बताई है 2 सर, एक है
2001,
28 जनवरी 22,
ये तो अभी रिसेंटली हुआ ना, अभी तो फरवरी
और एक
मार्च
15 मार्च 22।
देखिए दोनों रिसेंट है, तो अभी तो बहुत टाइम है, आपका ये ब्लॉक रहेगा, वर्किंग कैपिटल फंसी रहेगी। सो अभी कल परसों भी एक जजमेंट आई है जहां उन्होंने कहा मेरा ब्लॉक कर दिया, आई वांट टू पे बट आई कैन नॉट पे विद द एब्सेंस ऑफ दिस क्रेडिट बीइंग देयर। तो डिपार्टमेंट ने कहा है रीजन टू बिलीव कुछ है नहीं, सिंपली स्टेटिंग दैट्स अ बोगस फॉर्म, यू कैन नॉट ब्लॉक माय क्रेडिट। सो उन्होंने खोल दिया और उसको रिटर्न फाइल करने के लिए कह दिया। सो द ओनली रेमेडी इज गो टू द हाई कोर्ट एंड गेट जस्टिफिकेशन।
राइट सर। सर क्वेश्चंस अभी तो इतने ही आए हुए हैं
सर। मैं 1 सेकंड का थोड़ा सा ब्रेक लूंगा, आई जस्ट गो फॉर नेचर कॉल एंड कम बैक एंड देन आई स्टार्ट। इन द मीनवाइल इफ देयर इज एनी क्वेश्चन आई सी, अदरवाइज आई स्टार्ट विद द एडजुडिकेशन।
श्योर,
जस्ट परमिट मी 1 minute।
श्योर सर। Yes, Sangeeta ji, you have raised your hand. If you want to say
Welcome
something,
back after the break.
I've unmuted you, Sangeeta ji.
नवीन जी आप म्यूट हो.
नहीं सर, मेरा वॉइस चालू है.
नवीन जी आपकी आवाज नहीं. Just a second. It's my fault. मैंने ईयरफोन नहीं लगाया. My fault, sorry, मैंने ईयरफोन.
It's okay, sir. Sangeeta Dutta ji, आपने hand raise किया हुआ. You have raised your hand. If you have any question, you can ask. I have unmuted you.
Yes, actually, my question is that what are the consequences if someone shows the input and output amount on consolidated basis? I mean, without giving any details of the bill.
How can you claim that credit? It will come through GSTR 1 only. If somebody has made a sale, the amount shall be available to as a credit. He has to report in his GSTR 1. And in the case of debit note, that is also need to be reported. So unless otherwise, there is no amount which is coming in 2A, 2B, it will be very difficult for you to defend your case before the department. How can you say that your supplier has never raised it twice? So rather my suggestion will be whatever amount is appearing in 2A, 2B, there is no dispute to that extent. So you dispute only the differential amount. I'm entitled for this credit. It is a fault of the supplier. Or he has wrongly mentioned the GSTN number. It might have appeared in some other account. It should be appearing in my account. So you should make out your case. So certainly, so far as department is concerned, the department can recover that amount along with interest and penalties. We all understand. And this is what we are going to discuss now.
Correct.
When adjudication process will come, how availment and utilization is likely to affect your liability.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So friends, should we move to another topic?
Yes, sir, we can move. There were two more questions, sir. One is
Please.
question Mittal ji. As the SSC has stopped the business, can he apply for closure of business?
Why not? You can always apply for cancellation of registration, but kindly appreciate under section 18, once you are surrendering your number, then the stock which is available to you will be subject to GST, and in the definition of business, activity in relation to opening and closing is also being considered as a business. So the loophole which was there under the VAT law has been now clubbed. Earlier on in VAT law हम क्या करते थे, because the tax liability was only in the name of dealer, RC surrender करते थे, जो मशीनें बच जाती थी उनको बेच देते थे, we don't charge any VAT on that. But now whatever material is lying on which I have already claimed the credit, either is a machinery or input, then that is deemed to have been sold on that day. So before you surrender your number, do your calculation whether your tax liability or ITC, etc., will not become due. If you are still need to close down the business because of any important reason, certainly you can do it. There is no problem.
Right, sir. Praveen Vasidhar ji, I am unmuting you. You can ask it directly.
जी नमस्कार जी, मैं कर्नाटक से बात कर रहा हूँ.
जी
हाँ जी, अभी जो नया एसओपी लाया है सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट ने जी कि 17, 18, 18 को जो स्क्रूटिनी करेंगे, वो इसके बारे में थोड़ा कुछ पता है? वहाँ को डीजीएम जो रिकॉर्ड है उनका, जो खुद का रिकॉर्ड है उनका और हमका रिकॉर्ड कभी मैच नहीं हो रहा है, और उसको पूछते कि ये कहाँ से है, थोड़ा उसके क्या करेंगे सर?
देखिए, आप कर्नाटका से है और हिंदी इतनी अच्छी बोल लेते हैं, उसके लिए बहुत बहुत मुबारक हो आपको. नंबर 1, यू रियली नीड टू डिजर्व, बिकॉज कर्नाटका में तो कन्नड़ चलती है. एनीवे, जहां तक क्वेश्चन है एसओपी का, दैट इज ओनली ए प्रोसीजर फॉर द डिपार्टमेंटल ऑफिशियल्स. इफ इट गोज अगेंस्ट यू, it is not binding on you, you can certainly challenge it. We are being bound by the provisions of Act and the rules. We are not concerned what has been stated in the SOP. SOP is for the officers on which it is binding. So I think, in my humble understanding, that is a very detailed SOP which has given clear-cut indication to their officers. In these cases, you can do it. There are risk management analytical tools. यहाँ से information निकल के आ रही है. For example, if in an industry the ITC ratio is almost 80% and you're claiming 90%, then they can certainly ask you. So those kind of information is coming to them. And as I told you, they will issue ASMT 10, which is not going to create any demand. So your interest is not being affected at all. Ultimately, they have to serve you the show cause notice. If you feel you have committed some mistake and you follow it, then of course you can take advantage of this. Otherwise, तो आपके लिए तो कोई demand निकल नहीं रही है. आपके लिए तो कोई, if you feel that you have done everything as per the provisions of law, you are not going to lose anything by following that procedure. Ultimately, they have to serve you a show cause notice. Am I clear,
Okay.
sir?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
सर एक और क्वेश्चन है फ्रॉम अरविंद शर्मा जी. Wrong GSTN in RCM bill. Can now ITC be availed on the revised bill issued by the transporter?
Wrong GST on RCM. RCM में तो टैक्स होता ही नहीं. RCM में तो he will specify the value of service, and for your ready reference or ease, he may mention this is the amount which is liable to be paid by you. He may or may not mention. Yes, in terms of the rule, जो invoice है RCM का, या तो वो self invoice है, in case you are supplying it, getting the supplies from the unregistered dealer, and in case RCM for transporters mostly they are not registered, वो तो करेंगे ही नहीं. और RCM का क्रेडिट तो आपको मिलता है when you make payment of value of service in tax thereon. So जब भी आप उसकी RCM की पेमेंट करेंगे, उसके बाद ही आप उसका क्रेडिट ले पाएंगे. अब उसके साथ आपको इंटरेस्ट देना है या नहीं देना, ये एक और इशू है. सपोज RCM का बिल आया था उसका 2016 में, आपने पेमेंट की 18 में, तो नेचुरली जो पेमेंट आपको 16 में करनी चाहिए थी, जो पॉइंट ऑफ टैक्सेशन है, मेरे ख्याल से फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ इनवॉइस, इनवॉइस में 30 डेज और सर्विस में 60 डेज का टाइम है, जो भी डेट है उसके हिसाब से आपको इंटरेस्ट देना पड़ेगा. टैक्स का क्रेडिट आपको मिलेगा इवन इन 2022, even in 18, even if you make payment after 4 years, because you become eligible to claim the tax under RCM only when you make payment of the tax.
Right, sir. So अभी और कोई questions नहीं है, we can continue with the session, sir.
चलिए सर. एडजुडिकेशन का मैंने आपको डिक्शनरी मीनिंग बता दिया था. मैंने आपको ये बता दिया था कि एडजुडिकेटिंग अथॉरिटी में अब कमिश्नर नहीं आता है. अब आपके पास 2 टायर अपील सिस्टम है. मीनिंग देयर बाय अगर आपकी डिमांड 100 करोड़ रुपए की भी है तो उसके लिए भी एडजुडिकेशन करेगा एडिशनल कमिश्नर, जॉइंट कमिश्नर. फर्स्ट अपील कमिश्नर अपील के पास जाएगी, सेकंड अपील ट्रिब्यूनल में जाएगी. तो ये सब चीजें मैं आपको बता चुका हूं. नाउ आई एम कमिंग टू द रेलेवेंट सेक्शन and then we'll come to the practical issues which are very, very important because these show cause notice provisions have been under excise law since 1944, under service tax law since 1994, under custom act since 1961. तो इनकी बड़ी लंबी हिस्ट्री है. अभी हम जो बात करना चाहते हैं वो है एडजुडिकेशन प्रोसेस का पहला जो स्टेप है वो है इश्यूएंस ऑफ ए शो कॉज नोटिस. Issuance of show cause notice can be done only when one of the following 4 conditions are being satisfied. Number 1, non-payment of tax. Number 2, short payment of tax. Number 3, wrong availment or utilization of input tax credit. Number 4, erroneous claim of refund. If all the 4 events are because of fraud, willful misstatement or suppression of fact को भी define किया गया at the end of the explanation 2 to section 74. उसको हम सब डिटेल में डील करेंगे. We'll go to the provisions. तो आपको शो कॉज नोटिस हो सकता है अगर आपने फ्रॉड, कोलिजन, विलफुल मिसस्टेटमेंट वगैरह एलिगेशंस लगाए हैं डिपार्टमेंट ने, तो वहां आपका सेक्शन 74 लगेगा. 73 और 74 में बहुत सारे डिफरेंस है. दो 73 और 74 दोनों में 11 सब क्लॉजेज हैं. मोस्ट ऑफ द क्लॉजेज आर सिमिलर. तो सिमिलर क्लॉजेज को हम उसी तरह से डील करेंगे और जो डिफरेंशियल क्लॉजेज हैं उसको अलग से डील करेंगे, सो दैट वी कैन सेव द टाइम. Thereafter, we'll go to the ingredients of the show cause notices. We'll go to section 75, and then finally we'll come to the adjudication issues in practical life. अब शो कॉज नोटिस इशू करने से पहले एक रूल है, रूल 142. ये बात करता है शो कॉज नोटिस कंसल्टेशन. In excise and custom, there was a circular which used to say कि आपको पार्टी को शो कॉज इशू नोटिस करने से पहले प्री शो कॉज नोटिस कंसल्टेशन करनी चाहिए. जब जीएसटी लॉ आया तो उस सर्कुलर की बजाय इन्होंने एक रूल लगा दिया 142, जहां वर्ड कर दिया शेल. ऑफिसर को शो कॉज नोटिस प्री कंसल्टेशन नोटिस देना ही देना है. बाद में उस वर्ड को मे में कन्वर्ट कर दिया गया. बट अभी भी बहुत सारे हाई कोर्ट्स ये मानते हैं कि प्री शो कॉज नोटिस कंसल्टेशन इज अ मैकेनिज्म to reduce the litigation and it must be followed. In the absence of that procedure, there are number of judgments which they say you follow this procedure and then issue the show cause notice. अभी तो सरकार को कोई लॉस नहीं है क्योंकि वो जो भी शो कॉज नोटिस इशू करेंगे उसमें अभी भी उनको, सरकार को अभी कोई लॉस नहीं है क्योंकि अभी भी उनके पास टाइम लिमिट है. बट एज द टाइम प्रोग्रेस, द टाइम विल कम व्हेन द डिपार्टमेंट विल हैव नो टाइम to do this. तो फ्रेंड्स, प्री शो कॉज नोटिस कंसल्टेशन का जो प्रोसीजर है उसके हिसाब से वो आपको DRC 01 देगा पार्ट ए में, और पार्ट बी में आपको रिप्लाई करना है. अगर ये प्रोसीजर नहीं फॉलो किया गया then it can be one of the ground in your hand to challenge that procedure has not been followed, and there are judgments available in your favor by the High Court wherein this show cause notice may be dropped on that limited ground, even after issuing the word may also. Rule is 142. अब ये 142.01 is different than DRC 01. DRC 01 is a summary of the show cause notice which has to be issued along with the show cause. आपको show cause आएगा, उसके साथ DRC 01 आएगा which contain the summary of the demand which is being proposed in the show cause notice. Central authorities को तो ये सब provisions और ये procedures मालूम है because they have been dealing with show cause notice since last so many years, and this pre-show cause notice consultation was a procedure under excise, custom and service tax also. But unfortunately, state authorities are not having that kind of a clarity on the issue. तो ऐसी बहुत सारी जजमेंट आई हैं अभी हाई कोर्ट में जहां स्टेट अथॉरिटीज ने सिर्फ DRC 01 के बेसिस पे रिकवरी शुरू कर दी. They thought perhaps this is the document on the basis of which they can create demand. Similarly, DRC 01 के बेसिस पे उन्होंने शो कॉज नहीं किया, assuming that DRC 1 is the substitute of the show cause notice. But both the contentions are absolutely incorrect and wrong. Judgments are there, but kindly see when the show cause notice comes from the state authorities who are not conversant with this procedure, there is a likelihood that they have committed certain mistakes. For example, while passing an order, sometimes summary of demand is to be issued in DRC 07. So they don't pass the order only on the basis of DRC 07, they intend to create recoveries. So that is also totally illegal. So my humble submission is, before we answer the show cause notice, we must ensure that there is a pre-show cause notice consultation. Now the question is whether I must join the pre-show cause notice consultation. You may or may not. In some cases, wherever we don't want to exchange the information with the department because they have to issue the show cause notice after this procedure, they may become more intelligent and the show cause notice become more serious. So in that case, I may not join that procedure. But where pre-show cause notice consultation in 01A is not being done, there is no doubt you can take a legal ground, and on that basis also you can get a relief. Once you're getting a show cause notice, then kindly see DRC 01 should be issued along with the show cause notice. Both are not the substitute for each other. Again, I am repeating, if you are only issuing the DRC 01, then also show cause notice is not being served, no recovery can be made. If show cause notice is being given and DRC 01 is not given, that is again a procedural lapse, which may get you the relief, which may not get you the relief, depending on the severity of the situation. After that, once that show cause notice comes to you, now let us understand those 11 subsections of 73 and 74. Subsection 1 talk about that you have to serve the show cause notice in these 4 situations, which I have already repeated a couple of times. Last time again I am repeating it: non-payment of tax, short payment of tax, erroneous claim of refund, wrong availment or utilization of credit. Due to fraud, willful misstatement, suppression, 74, otherwise 73, along with interest and penalties as specified in the show cause notice. The proper now subsection 2 talk about the time limit of issuance of notice. Pre-GST era में जो लोग सर्विस सेक्टर की प्रैक्टिस करते थे, उनको आदत है कि शो कॉज नोटिस शुड बी इशूड विद इन 5 years फ्रॉम द रेलेवेंट डेट, बट एडजुडिकेशन की कोई टाइम लिमिट नहीं थी. अब बहुत सारे हाई कोर्ट के जजमेंट आए, इंक्लूडिंग वन दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट और मुंबई हाई कोर्ट, जहां उन्होंने 16 साल बाद एडजुडिकेशन किया तो हाई कोर्ट ने कहा भैया कोई टाइम लिमिट तो कोई रीजनेबल होती है, 16 साल के बाद आप कर रहे हो तो ऑन लिमिटेड ग्राउंड दैट ऑर्डर इज बीइंग क्वेश्चन्ड. बट यहाँ जो टाइम लिमिट है, यहाँ दोनों की टाइम लिमिट रखी है. इसको थोड़ा ध्यान से सुनेंगे क्योंकि ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. जहां कहीं आपका मेरिट पे केस नहीं होता, यही थोड़े से टेक्निकल प्रोविजन है जो आपको हेल्प करते हैं अपने लायबिलिटी रिड्यूस करने में. सबसेक्शन 2 दोनों में, 73 में भी और 74 में भी बात करता है कि आपको जो 73(10) में टाइम लिमिट रखी गई है एडजुडिकेशन की, टाइम लिमिट किसी रखी गई है एडजुडिकेशन की, ऐसे ही 74(10) में टाइम लिमिट रखी गई है एडजुडिकेशन की, उससे 3 महीने पहले शो कॉज सर्व करना है इफ योर केस इज फॉलिंग अंडर सेक्शन 73, और आपको 6 महीने पहले शो कॉज नोटिस इशू करना है इन केस योर केस इज फॉलिंग अंडर सेक्शन 74. जैसे मैंने आपको कहा ड्यू डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग द रिटर्न उस फाइनेंशियल ईयर की देखेंगे, उसके अंदर 5 साल ऐड करेंगे. लेट अस से 21-22 की अगर हम बात करते हैं करंट ईयर की, तो ये इसकी ड्यू डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग ऑफ रिटर्न एज ऑन टुडे 31st December 22. आई सपोज इट इज नॉट बीइंग एक्सटेंडेड. देन बाय 31st December 2027 he has to adjudicate the matter which are falling under section 74. But क्योंकि 73 में 3 साल का पीरियड है, he has to pass the adjudication order 3 months from 31st December 22, that is 31st December 25. So that means show cause notice जो subsection 2 में आएगा 3 महीने पहले आना है. So that means 73 में दिसंबर 25 में एडजुडिकेशन कंप्लीट करना है और 3 महीने पहले यानी 30 सितंबर 2025 से पहले उसको शो कॉज नोटिस इशू करना है. यहाँ वर्ड सर्व्ड नहीं है, जो पहले लॉ में सर्व्ड वर्ड था, यहाँ इशू है. अब इसके ऊपर बहुत सारी सुप्रीम कोर्ट जजमेंट हैं जहां उन्होंने ये कहा कि इशू मींस व्हेन इट इज बीइंग कम्युनिकेटेड, दैट इज द डेट. आप अपने ऑफिस में फाइल में इशू करके रख लो. तो एसएससी को क्या पता है? तो ये यहाँ वर्ड इशू है, इट विल गिव राइज टू लिटिगेशन, जहां मार्जिनल केसेस होंगे. 27 दिसंबर को इश्यू हुआ, देन वी वांट टू से कि कम्युनिकेशन इज ऑन 1st of January, so we will say that this period has become time barred, part of the period of that show cause notice. ये रिटर्न के ऊपर बेस्ड होता है, महीने के ऊपर होता है. जैसे हमारे सर्विस टैक्स में 6 महीने में रिटर्न फाइल होती थी, तो 6 मंथ के हिसाब से हम टाइम बार्ड पीरियड निकालते थे. तो यहाँ भी उसी हिसाब से जो 1 महीने का जिसकी मंथली रिटर्न है उसकी 1 महीने का पीरियड इफेक्ट हो सकता है, जिसकी क्वार्टरली रिटर्न है उसका 1 क्वार्टर का पीरियड एक्सपेक्ट हो सकता है. तो ये डेट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट होती है. बट अनलाइक अर्लियर लॉ, जहां उन्होंने डेट लिखी थी इश्यूएंस ऑफ शो कॉज नोटिस की और एडजुडिकेशन नहीं था, और इश्यूएंस शो कॉज नोटिस में वर्ड यूज किया था सर्व, यहाँ वर्ड यूज किया है इशू. द प्रॉपर ऑफिसर शैल इशू द नोटिस अंडर सबसेक्शन 1 at least 3 months prior to the time specified in subsection 10. Subsection 10 क्या बात करता है? एडजुडिकेशन की टाइम लिमिट. तो मेरी सर्विस ऑफ नोटिस की टाइम लिमिट फिक्स्ड है with reference to the time limit prescribed for the adjudication. Am I clear? If anybody wants to raise any question with regard to these subsections also, he can raise the hand. We can take those questions in between also. Then comes subsection 3. This says अगर आपको एक पीरियड का शो कॉज हो गया तो सब्सिक्वेंट पीरियड में अगर फैक्ट सेम है, एलिगेशन सेम है, तो rather than serving you the full-fledged show cause notice for the subsequent period, he can serve you a statement in a summary manner, not repeating all the allegations which are there in the original show cause notice, and he can serve you the statement that will be treated as a valid show cause notice. ये बात उसने कही सबसेक्शन 4 में, जहां वो लिखता है सर्विस ऑफ सच स्टेटमेंट शैल बी डीम्ड टू द सर्विस ऑफ नोटिस ऑन सच पर्सन इफ द ग्राउंड्स रिलाइड अपॉन फॉर सच टैक्स पीरियड आर आइडेंटिकल. जहां वो सेम है वहां आपको अब आता है बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट सेक्शन 73(5). इसका कॉरेस्पॉन्डिंग 74(5) भी सेम है. वॉलंटरी पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स प्लस इंटरेस्ट, if you do it on your own ascertainment or even being pointed out by the officer concerned, and you make payment of the tax and interest before issuance of a show cause notice, and you make the payment in DRC 03, payment is not under protest, you inform to the officer concerned, he will not issue you the show cause notice. But when it comes to 74(5), it is very, very important. इसको थोड़ा ध्यान से सुनेंगे. जब 74(5) की बात आती है तो आपको टैक्स, इंटरेस्ट और 15% ऑफ द टैक्स एज पेनल्टी जमा कराना पड़ेगा. Now the question comes, if I pay the penalty, does it have any implication under income tax law? This is very serious, particularly when the allegation is in relation to the fake credit or credit on the basis of fake invoice. कभी भी 74(5) में पेनल्टी मत जमा करिए. अगर आपने टैक्स, इंटरेस्ट और पेनल्टी जमा करा दी तो वो शो कॉज नहीं सर्व करेगा. अब मैं आपको कुछ इनकम टैक्स के सेक्शन याद दिलाना चाहता हूं. Kindly look at 271 AAD, 276 AD, जो नया सेक्शन आया 1/4/2020 से. उन्होंने कहा if you are making an entry in the books of account wherein supply is not being received or transaction has not happened, then there is a penalty equivalent to the amount of transaction, not GST tax. इसके implication समझिएगा कितना सीरियस है. आपने 100 रुपए का क्रेडिट लिया, या लेटर से 1000 रुपए का बिल था, 180 रुपए का क्रेडिट लिया, 1180 रुपए टोटल बिल की वैल्यू है. आपने मान लिया ये फेक है, आपने 180 रुपए टैक्स प्लस इंटरेस्ट और 15% ऑफ 180, 23 रुपए आपने जमा करा दिए पेनल्टी के. Now look at the consequence. In 276 AAD, you are liable to pay penalty equivalent to the amount of 1,180 rupees. Then, once that transaction is not there, certainly you admit it is a fake transaction, then whether that will be allowed as an expense in computing your taxable income? Certainly not. So that amount will be added to your income and on which tax will be demanded. And once the demand of tax will be more, not penalty, then 234, if you are not paid the advance tax according to your income, then you are liable to face consequences there also. So there are 68, 60, बहुत सारे सेक्शन इनकम टैक्स के ऐसे होंगे जो वहां लग जाएंगे, क्योंकि अगर आपने ये प्रूव कर दिया कि 10 लाख रुपए की आपने परचेज की और उसकी पेमेंट भी आपने कैश में की हुई है, other serious complications. So my point is, in 73, no problem. I can pay tax and interest. I can say to buy the mental piece, I have paid it. But in 74, if you say this, I am paying 15% of penalty, no show cause notice, then ITO will certainly ask you, भैया तुमने वहां टैक्स इंटरेस्ट में पेनल्टी जमा कराई है, उसने शो कॉज भी नहीं किया, आप कंटेस्ट नहीं कर रहे, दैट मींस देयर इज एडमिशन ऑन योर पार्ट, दिस ट्रांजैक्शन इज नॉट जेन्युइन, सो आई एम imposing penalty under section 276 AD at this along your expenditure. And look at the financial consequences. 1180 रुपए, वहां तो सिर्फ 180 का टैक्स जाएगा, 180 पे इंटरेस्ट लगा, 180 पे पेनल्टी लगेगी, क्या 1180 रुपए प्लस 1180 पे 37-38 जो भी आपका इफेक्टिव रेट ऑफ टैक्स है वो, प्लस रेस्ट ऑफ द कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस ऑफ इंटरेस्ट एंड पेनल्टी. सो इट्स अ वेरी ह्यूज इम्प्लीकेशन. सो बहुत बार मेरे से ये क्वेश्चन किया जाता है कि सर इफ दैट बीइंग सो एंड वी आर अंडर प्रेशर, डिमांड 5 करोड़ से ऊपर है, मुझे पर्सनल लिबर्टी बचानी है, मैं 2 करोड़ 3 करोड़ में जमा करवा रहा हूँ, आई से डिपॉजिट इन अंडर प्रोटेस्ट. डोंट यूज 74(5). Don't pay penalty on that. Let him issue a show cause notice. तो 180 रुपए पे जो पेनल्टी लगनी है, 180 रुपए का ही तो नोटिस आएगा. कम से कम मेरी 1180 प्लस जो बाकी इनकम टैक्स की डिमांड है 40% ऑफ दैट, वो तो बचेगी, विच इज मच मच हायर अमाउंट. सो 74(5) कभी यूज मत करें बिकॉज ऑफ इनकम टैक्स. बोगस मैंने देखा फेक इनवॉइसेस का इशू कल जतिन क्रिस्टोफर कर रहे हैं शेयर, तो मैं उस पर ज्यादा डील नहीं करना चाहूंगा, हालांकि ये मेरा फेवरेट सब्जेक्ट है, बट बिकॉज ही इज डीलिंग विद दैट, माय सब्जेक्ट इज डिफरेंट, सो आई विल कन्फाइन टू माय सब्जेक्ट. मैं सिर्फ इतना कहना चाहूंगा 74(5) नहीं यूज करें, और जहां के पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्स करने हैं 2 प्रोविजन को ध्यान में रखें विच कैन हेल्प यू. अगर तो आपने वो ट्रांजेक्शन अभी स्केल्ड अप नहीं की है, तो आप उस ट्रांजैक्शन को स्केल्ड अप करने के लिए ये कह सकते हैं कि भैया मेरे पास पैसे नहीं थे, कोविड था, कैश लिक्विडिटी थी, एज ए रिजल्ट ऑफ विच आई कुड नॉट मेक द पेमेंट, सो आई एम रिवर्सिंग द क्रेडिट, बट ट्रांजैक्शन इज जेन्युइन. सेकंड कैन बी, अगर वो ट्रांजैक्शन स्केल्ड अप हो गई है, आपने बैंक से पहले एंट्री खत्म कर दी है, तो दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये हो सकता है कि देयर इज अ प्रोविजन इन सेक्शन 16(2)(c) clause which says if supplier has not paid tax to the government, then your credit is not admissible to you. You can say, I have been given to understand that my supplier has not made payment of tax, though this transaction is appearing in GST1, it's a genuine transaction, but he could not make the payment. And in terms of section 16(2)(c), because he has not made the payment, I am not eligible for the credit. So I am making this payment to buy the mental piece, but my transaction is genuine. Even if he issues a notice and he threatens you कि अगर 15% नहीं है तो ultimately ये penalty आपकी 100% of the tax लग सकती है. Doesn't matter because the financial consequences or the financial prudence is it is much better as compared to facing the heat of the income tax. There are 2 hands which have been raised. Naveen Kumar, the second is Deepa Vita Bose. Can you take your...
I can unmute you if you can ask your question, please.
Hello.
Naveen ji, please go ahead.
The question is, in recent budget, in section 146, government has made one change regarding service of notice or issuance of notice online and then made it gst.gov.in as a common portal. Before that, it was not a common portal. In this budget, they have made this change in section 146 that the notices can be issued in this common portal also. So my question here is, whatever notices has been issued in the portal before this change, what will be the fate of that notices?
देखिए, service of notice, if a particular mode is not being specified in this section, then section 169 deals with the subject. Now it is similar to the section 37F of Central Excise Law, where the language was very clear. Here there is a slight problem in the language. They have stated that you can serve the notice in any one of the following methods, and there are 5 methods being given, irrespective of the fact whether they are to be sequentially followed, which was the language under 37F. But इस language से ऐसा नहीं लगता कि they have to be sequentially followed. In case 169 में मोड प्रिस्क्राइब है, उस प्रिस्क्राइब मोड से उन्होंने सर्विस किया तो वैलिड सर्विस, अदरवाइज इट इज नॉट डीम्ड टू बी एनी सर्विस. वो इसलिए है मेरे दोस्तों, अगर आपने ये देखा हो लॉ में, तो लॉ में एक बड़ा पर्टिकुलरली बहुत सारी जजमेंट हैं जो आपको इस एस्पेक्ट पे मिलती हैं, which says if a manner of doing a particular thing has been defined in the law, it must be done in that manner only, or it must not be done at all. So based on those judgments, you can challenge the notice. So kindly look at section 169. So long as this amendment is concerned, I don't know, these amendment, if you're talking about with context to GST, not my knowledge. If it is in relation to income tax, I am not going to comment on it. But in any case, अगर GST में भी ये amendment है, मेरी knowledge में नहीं है, तो भी ये notify होगी, तब उसमें देखेंगे. अभी as on today 169, I don't think this is under GST law. I think most likely it is under income tax law.
Sir, it's 146 under GST.
146 clause होगी ना?
ये section है sir.
सर फाइनेंस एक्ट का सेक्शन है या 146 सेक्शन है अपना?
ये सेक्शन 146 CGST एक्ट, क्लॉज 114 फाइनेंस बिल.
सर 146 जो सेक्शन है, मैं निकाल लिया आपकी बात करते करते.
हाँ सर, उसमें कॉमन पोर्टल का जो नोटिफिकेशन आया था
सर वो ठीक है, मैं मान गया, मैं तो उस बात को डिनाई नहीं कर रहा हूँ. What I am trying to say is this is in relation to common portal. So the only thing is the law which is prevalent at the time when the notice is issued, that shall prevail. So it was not in common portal, then certainly it is not a valid service. There is no doubt about that.
सर, तो जो डिमांड रेज किया है स्टेट ऑफिसर्स ने, उसमें कोई भी और नोटिस दिया ही नहीं है, खाली पोर्टल पे डाल के छोड़ दिया.
बिना सर्विस के नोटिस के शो कॉज की सर्विस ही इनवैलिड है. पर अभी अगर आप डिपार्टमेंट को कहेंगे तो डिपार्टमेंट के पास अभी टाइम है, दे कैन इश्यू यू अनदर शो कॉज नोटिस बाय इंप्रूविंग द सर्विस एज प्रिस्क्राइब्ड अंडर लॉ. देन दैट शो कॉज नोटिस यू नीड टू रिस्पॉन्ड. अभी आप चुप कर जाएं और थोड़े दिन वेट कर ले, जब तक वो रिकवरी के लिए किसी बात के लिए प्रेशर नहीं डाल रहे. जब ये टाइम बार्ड हो जाए तब इस इशू को उठाएं. दैट इज माय सजेशन.
सर एक और क्वेश्चन है 86A का ब्लॉकिंग में. अभी क्या कर रहा है, कुछ भी रीजन नहीं दे रहा है और इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर में 1 लाख रुपया बैलेंस है, दे ब्लॉक फॉर 10 लाख.
क्या दोबारा बोलिए, कितना लेजर है?
इलेक्ट्रॉनिक क्रेडिट लेजर में 1 लाख रुपीस बैलेंस है. हाँ, और वो लोग 10 लाख रुपया का नेगेटिव ब्लॉक.
सर मैंने आपको पहले कहा है ना, बहुत सारी जजमेंट है. अगर आप मुझे 1 मिनट का टाइम दे तो मैं जजमेंट के साइटेशन भी अभी दे सकता हूँ. गुजरात हाई कोर्ट की है, बाकी बहुत सारी जजमेंट्स हैं. काइंडली गो टू दैट. नेगेटिव कैन नॉट बी डन.
सर हमने बोला है तो बोलता है
हाई कोर्ट जाइए, फिर नहीं मानते तो सर उसमें तो मैं भी कुछ नहीं कर सकता. अगर ऑफिसर आपकी बात नहीं मान रहा, कानून को नहीं समझना चाह रहा, तो उसमें तो मैं भी कुछ नहीं कर सकता.
सर तो उनपे कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ लॉ या कुछ भी नहीं लगा सकता ना?
तो लगाइए ना सर. जाएंगे, कौन लगाएगा? अल्टीमेटली हाई कोर्ट ही लगाएगी ना. कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट कौन लगाएगा? हाई कोर्ट लगाएगी. तो हाई कोर्ट तो जाना ही पड़ेगा. तो आप हाई कोर्ट जाए रिट में, वहां ये भी ग्राउंड लेंगे, उन पे कंटेम्प्ट ऑफ कोर्ट भी लगाइए.
करना ही पड़ेगा, जो मान ही नहीं रहे.
जरूर चाहिए सर. ऐसे ही लॉ डेवलप होता है. ऐसे हाई कोर्ट में रोज भरे पड़े हैं, इसलिए केस यही इसीलिए होते हैं. चलिए सर, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन.
Somebody has said the case law name Samay India Private Limited.
नहीं, उसके अलावा एक और भी अगर आप कहें तो मैं आप मुझे 2 मिनट दे दें. कभी लेटेस्ट आया कल परसों ही जहां भी नेगेटिव केस की बात की है. Let me look at it if it is easily available to me. इस समय तो पुराना केस ला हो गया, मैं तो अभी आपको लेटेस्ट दे रहा हूँ. यस, आप नोट करिए. मद्रास हाई सॉरी मेरे पे सिस्टम साइटेशन नहीं है. आप ये समय वाला देख लीजिए, उसके साथ और भी साइटेशन आपको मिल जाएंगे. रिसेंटली गुजरात हाई कोर्ट भी आया. चलिए और बताएं.
सर दीपान्विता जी का क्वेश्चन था लेकिन उनका क्वेश्चन आंसर हो गया है. तो शी हैज सेड इन द चैट बॉक्स हर क्वेश्चन इज ऑलरेडी आंसर्ड. तो अपन मूव अहेड कर सकते हैं सर.
चलिए अब हम आते हैं सेक्शन 74(5) की एक्सप्लेनेशन के बाद, which has got a serious implication vis-a-vis income tax law. So be considerate while using 74(5). 73(5) में कोई इशू नहीं है. Then 73(6) and 74(6) on similar line, it says if you have made the voluntary payment, then the proceeding to that an extent deemed to have been concluded and no show cause notice will be issued. But wherever we are disputing the transaction, we want the show cause notice to be issued. So I am suggesting you not to pay the penalty and the payment should be made under protest so that he can serve you the show cause notice. Then subsection 7 talk about if according to you, your liability is rupees 100, according to the department, the liability is rupees 120, you pay voluntarily tax of rupees 100 along with interest, he can serve you notice only for 20 rupees. It is not necessary that you should agree with all the allegations of the department. I'll try to explain it a little bit in detail. Let us assume there are 4 issues involved. Issue of wrong claim of credit, blockage of credit, rate of tax, notification exemption, etc. You agree on 3 issues. And on those 3 issues, you use the provision of section 73(5), pay the tax and interest. And in the case of 74, if it is not in relation to fake invoice, it is in relation to interpretation of problem, and you agree with that, then you also pay 15% of the penalty. I am only cautioning you under section 74(5), only with regard to the proposition where there can be an allegation that this transaction is not genuine. If it is interpretational or exemption issue or rate of tax issue, you can pay 15% and then no demand. So coming to back to the discussion, 73(7) and 74(7) very clearly provides that in case there are 4 issues, you agree with the 3 issues, the department can serve you show cause notice only on the 4th issue. You need not agree with all the 4 issues which has been raised by the departmental officer. Sometimes the department tried to misguide the client, saying अगर आपने 73(5) का प्रोविजन लेना है तो आपको सारी टैक्स डिमांड जमा करानी पड़ेगी, पर ऐसा लॉ में नहीं है. मैं फिर कॉशन कर रहा हूं, if you want to agree with 2 proposal or 3 proposal, you can agree with that. And subsequently, on the other issue, you can ask him to issue the show cause notice you want to contest it. Then comes sections 73(8) and 74(8). अब शो कॉज इश्यू हो गया, हमने 73(5) का अवेलमेंट नहीं किया. शो कॉज नोटिस इश्यू होने के 30 दिन बाद भी अगर मैं टैक्स और इंटरेस्ट जमा करा देता हूं तब भी मुझे कोई पेनल्टी नहीं लगेगी. बट ऐसा 74(8) में नहीं है. 74(8) में कहता है कि अगर आपने टैक्स प्लस इंटरेस्ट प्लस 25% ऑफ द टैक्स एज पेनल्टी जमा कराई है तब आपको 74(8) का एडवांटेज मिलेगा. दैट मीन्स अंडर 74(5), जैसे मैंने कहा 73(5) में मुझे कोई पेनल्टी नहीं जमा करानी, 74(5) में मुझे 15% करानी है. 73 में 73(8) में मुझे कोई पेनल्टी जमा नहीं करानी, बट 74(8) में मुझे 25% ऑफ द टैक्स एज पेनल्टी जमा करानी. I hope you understand this. Then comes 73(9) and 74(9), which very clearly provides that once your reply is being considered, he has to pass an order. He doesn't agree with your contention. Then he will demand the tax and penalty equivalent to 10% of the tax only in case of Section 73. And whatever interest is payable under Section 50, you're liable to pay. But when it comes to Section 74, it clearly says the penalty can be equivalent to the amount of tax involved. 73(9) में जो order आएगा उसमें maximum penalty है 10% of the tax involved or rupees 10,000, whichever is higher. That means 10,000 is the minimum penalty, but then it is only restricted to 10%. अगर 10 लाख का tax involved है तो 1 लाख की penalty लगेगी. But अगर यही 74 है तो मेरी penalty भी 10 लाख रुपए की लग सकती है. Am I clear? Then Section 10 talk about time limit of adjudication. जैसे मैंने कहा था 73(2) में और 74(2) में issuance of show cause notice की time limit है, which is 3 months prior to the date of adjudication order to be passed, और 74(10) में 6 months prior to the date of adjudication order passed. तो यहाँ 73(10) और 74 में उन्होंने टाइम लिमिट दी है 5 years from the relevant date. You have to pass the order. और यहाँ मैं एक चीज और डील कर दूं, Section 75 Subsection 10 is very important. ऐसा कभी किसी लॉ में नहीं लिखा गया, जितनी क्लैरिटी से यहाँ लिख दिया गया कि in case the adjudication is not being completed within the time period specified under Section 73(10) and 74(10), the proceedings are deemed to be concluded in favor of the assessee. 75(10) is very, very important. Kindly see if the departmental officer fails. Of course, यहाँ भी language issue the order है, serve the order नहीं है, तो वो थोड़ा बहुत झगड़ा चल सकता है. But in any case, 75(10) is very clear. If the proceedings are not being completed, then you are liable to. Then the proceedings are deemed to be concluded in favor of the assessee. कोई demand नहीं create हो सकती. Such a huge benefit is being allowed. आपके इनकम टैक्स एक्ट में बहुत जगह लिखा है इट इज डिजायरेबल इतना करे, इस सीएस ऑर्डर के रेक्टिफिकेशन इतने पीरियड में हो जाना चाहिए, बट इन केस इट इज नॉट बीइंग डन देन consequences are not being defined. This is one situation where the consequence is being defined. So this is very, very important according to me. Then comes subsection 11, which is different in 73, which is different in 74. पहले 73 की बात करते हैं. ये कहता है कि forget about 6, that means जहां हमने शो कॉज से पहले पैसे करा दिए, या forget about 8, जहां हमने शो कॉज के within 30 days टैक्स जमा करा दिए. In the case of self assessed tax, जब मैं 59 डील कर रहा था, मैंने आपसे वहां भी कहा था आपसे, सेल्फ असेस्ड टैक्स के केस में पेनल्टी लगेगी. और इसी तरह से if you have collected the GST tax and failed to pay beyond 3 months, then you are liable to pay the tax. When it comes to 74(11), which is entirely a different section, and 74(11) किस बात को डील करता है? 74(11) says if the adjudication order has been done against you. अभी तक हम बात कर रहे थे प्री शो कॉज की 15% penalty. Within 30 days after show cause, 25% penalty. Now we are talking about a situation where the adjudication has been done. Even at this stage, you can pay tax, interest, and 50% of the tax as penalty. Then your proceedings are deemed to be concluded here itself. तो 74 में 3 तरह की penalties हैं. अगर आपने शो कॉज से पहले इशू कर टैक्स जमा करा दिया तो 15% ऑफ द टैक्स है. विद इन 30 डेज फ्रॉम द शो कॉज कराया तो 25% ऑफ द टैक्स है. और एडजुडिकेशन के बाद कराया तो यहाँ विद इन 50% ऑफ द टैक्स ऑफ पेनल्टी है. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा था कि सब प्रोसीडिंग कंप्लीट हो जाएंगी. एक्सप्लेनेशन 2 में सप्रेशन को भी डिफाइन किया गया. और ये जो एक्सप्लेनेशन लगाएगी ये सुप्रीम कोर्ट की जजमेंट को देख के लगाएगी, जहां सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने भी सिमिलर काइंड ऑफ लैंग्वेज दी कि सप्रेशन मींस नॉन डिक्लेरेशन ऑफ फैक्ट्स और इंफॉर्मेशन व्हिच ए टैक्सेबल पर्सन इज रिक्वायर्ड टू डिक्लेयर बट फेल टू डिक्लेयर इट, दैट इज द सप्रेशन. सर्विस टैक्स एंड एक्साइज में ये लॉ डिफाइन नहीं था. अब मैं आपको थोड़ा सा कंपैरिजन दे देता हूं 73 74 की पेनल्टीज का. अगर मैं 73(5) में जमा कराता हूं टैक्स और इंटरेस्ट, कोई पेनल्टी नहीं. within 30 days from the date of show cause notice कराता हूँ tax और interest, कोई penalty नहीं. Yes, after adjudication कराता हूँ तो maximum penalty is 10%. In the case of 74, before show cause 15% of tax as penalty. Within 30 days of show cause 25% tax as a penalty, and after adjudication 50% of the tax as a penalties. Now friends, I will hurriedly go through section 75, then we'll come to the important issues with regard to practical issues of show cause notice as well as adjudication. 75 के कुछ clauses मैं पहले deal कर चुका हूं, उनको नहीं deal करूंगा, but this is the most important section in the sense कि जो भी आज तक सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने जजमेंट दी एक्साइज और सर्विस टैक्स में, उसको उन्होंने स्टैट्यूटरी प्रोविजन के रूप में दे दिया ताकि लिटिगेशन कम से कम हो. पहला उन्होंने 75(1) में कहा कि ये जो शो कॉज नोटिस इश्यू करने की लिमिट है 73(2) या 74(2) में या 10 में एडजुडिकेशन की, अगर कोर्ट ने कहीं कोई स्टे दिया हुआ है तो वो पीरियड भी उसमें से एक्सक्लूड हो जाएगा. एम आई क्लियर? दूसरा उन्होंने ये कहा, अगर आपने एलिगेशन लगाया और मुझे शो कॉज किया 74 में, पर कल को आप एलिगेशन प्रूव नहीं कर पाए कि देयर इज ए फ्रॉड, विलफुल स्टेटमेंट ऑफ सप्रेशन इन टर्म्स ऑफ लॉ, और जब आप उसको नहीं प्रूव कर पाते हैं तो जो डिमांड 73(1) की थी, जो नॉर्मल पीरियड की डिमांड थी, वो कंफर्म्ड हो सकती है. वो ऐसा इसलिए किया गया कि पुराने लॉ में बहुत सारे डिस्प्यूट्स थे इस तरह के कि जहां एलिगेशन फ्रॉड लगाया गया और फ्रॉड नहीं हुआ, तो हाउ कैन यू कंफर्म द डिमांड अंडर अ डिफरेंट सेक्शन. तो यहाँ उन्होंने इसको क्लियर कर दिया सो दैट देयर इज नो डिस्प्यूट विद द एसएससी एंड द डिपार्टमेंट, एंड दे हैव वेरी क्लियरली स्टेटेड दैट इन केस you have served a notice under section 74, though the onus of proving that there is a fraud, willful misstatement or suppression is on the part of department, they fail to prove it, then they can confirm the demand by invoking the provision of section 73. उसमें जो डिमांड आपकी टाइम बार्ड हो जाएगी वो नहीं हो पाएगी, लेकिन जो विद इन लिमिटेशन पीरियड होगी उस पीरियड की डिमांड आपकी कंफर्म हो जाएगी. Subsection 3 of section 75 says in case there is a order being remanded back to the file of adjudicating authority or by the higher form to the lower form, then that order has to be passed within 2 years from the date of such direction of legal order. 75(4) principle of natural justice, everybody knows. VAT law में इतने सारे झगड़े हुए तो ये कहा गया कि चाहे लॉ में प्रोविजन है या नहीं है, ऑब्जेक्शन हियरिंग अथॉरिटी को पर्सनल हियरिंग देनी पड़ेगी बिकॉज ऑफ प्रिंसिपल नेचुरल जस्टिस. और अब प्रिंसिपल नेचुरल जस्टिस में 3 प्रिंसिपल मानते हैं. नोबडी कैन बी जज इन हिज ओन केस, nobody should be condemned unheard, proper hearing notice must be given. तो उन्होंने 75(4) में कह दिया कि wherever the assessee has asked for the personal hearing, the proper officer is duty bound to provide him the hearing. Kindly appreciate, in one of the High Court judgment, they have also stated even if he has not asked for the personal hearing and any material is likely to be used against him which is not been confronted to him, you have to provide him the opportunity. Subsection 5 of section 75 कहता है अगर there are reasonable ground, reasonable cause, then proper officer can give you an adjournment, but then that such adjournment cannot be more than 3. ये हम लोग चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट पर्टिकुलरली मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा सबसे और आपकी अटेंशन चाहूंगा, we seek adjournment in a very casual manner, but unlike income tax where there is no limit on adjournment, here the law says you can be given only maximum 3 adjournment in a given case. So don't seek adjournment for the sake of adjournment, because after 3rd adjournment he can pass the order ex parte to the best of his judgment. So my humble request is kindly consider it. In order to overcome this provision, कुछ ऑफिसर्स क्या करते हैं, आपका नोटिस आएगा तो ध्यान से सुनिएगा, उसमें 3 डेट लिखी होंगी, 11 जनवरी, 17 जनवरी, 18 जनवरी. सो कोर्ट हैव स्टेटेड, पर्टिकुलरली अहमदाबाद ट्रिब्यूनल, उन्होंने ये कहा कि 3 डेट एक नोटिस में देना 3 हियरिंग के बराबर नहीं है. We will consider it only as वन हियरिंग, और हियरिंग जो है, जो आपने पर्सनल हियरिंग देनी है, वो भी रिजनेबल होनी चाहिए। ऐसा नहीं जैसे अभी एक हाई कोर्ट में कहा कि उन्होंने रात को 12 बजे नोटिस सर्व किया कि सुबह 10 बजे आप आ जाओ। देयर हैज टू बी रिजनेबल टाइम, whatever information is asked, according to that a reasonable time must be permitted to him. Hearing for the sake of hearing नहीं होनी चाहिए, they should be a reasonable hearing. सबसेक्शन 6 ने कितनी अच्छी बात कही। अभी अब कट कॉपी पेस्ट का कल एक जजमेंट आया पंजाब एंड हाई कोर्ट का, जहाँ शो कॉज नोटिस और एडजुडिकेशन ऑर्डर में कट कॉपी पेस्ट किया, कोई दिमाग ही नहीं लगाया अथॉरिटी। यू आर क्वासी जुडिशियल अथॉरिटी, हाउ कैन यू कट कॉपी पेस्ट एंड थिंग्स विदाउट गिविंग एनी रीजन। तो 75(6) का रेफरेंस वहां भी आया, वहां लिखा है कि आपको जो ऑर्डर पास करना है, यहाँ एडजुडिकेशन ऑर्डर को ऑर्डर ओरिजिनल कहते हैं, उस ऑर्डर में आपको स्टेटमेंट ऑफ फैक्ट्स लिखने हैं बड़े क्लियरली, और आपको बेसिस ऑफ डिसीजन देना है। व्हाट इज द कंटेंशन ऑफ द एसएससी, व्हाई यू आर नॉट एग्रीइंग विद दैट। इफ इज रिलाइंग ऑन सर्टेन केस लॉ, यू हैव टू गिव अ रिबटल और यू हैव टू डिस्टिंग्विश दैट केस लॉ। So this is again 75(6) is very very important. अब 75(7) में इतने सारे केसेस, इतने सारे डिस्प्यूट थे एक्साइज लॉ में, जिनको उन्होंने बंद करने की कोशिश की है। It was a settled principle of law through judicial pronouncement that whatever allegations are there in the show cause notice, you cannot improve the quality of show cause subsequently. As a result of which, ना तो आप और कोई पैसा डिमांड कर सकते हो, ना कोई और नया एलिगेशन लगा सकते हो। और अगर डिमांड कंफर्म किया एक प्रोविजन में, एक सेक्शन में, you cannot substitute that section with another section. For example, in Service Act, the demand is being proposed under business auxiliary, you cannot confirm it a business support. So similar kind of things. Now 75(7) is being provided very clearly, stating that any order original passed by the adjudicating authority cannot go beyond the scope of show cause notice. So this is very very important section. 75(8) we all understand appeal effects, etc. Whenever any text is being varied or modified in the subsequent appeal or proceedings, certainly the interest and penalty will accordingly reduce or increase accordingly. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा था, सेल्फ असेस टैक्स में इंटरेस्ट का भी वही मेंशन है, 50 में भी दिया, 75(9) में भी लिख दिया। इंटरेस्ट इज लायबल टू बी पेड इवन इफ इट इज नॉट डिमांडेड इन शो कॉज नोटिस। आप ये नहीं कह सकते कि शो कॉज नोटिस में इंटरेस्ट की डिमांड नहीं थी, सिर्फ टैक्स और पेनल्टी की है, तो आप इंटरेस्ट नहीं लगा सकते। तो उन्होंने 75(9) में कह दिया देयर इज नो नीड। 75(10) में आपको डिस्कस कर चुका हूँ कि बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट सेक्शन है। अगर मेरा टाइम लिमिट प्रोवाइड नहीं किया गया, मेरे टाइम लिमिट के अंदर मेरी प्रोसीडिंग्स कंक्लूड नहीं की गई 74(10), 73 की, then deemed to have been allowed. 75(11) ये कॉल बुक का एक कंसेप्ट होता था एक्साइज में, जिन लोगों को बताओ। तो अब उन्होंने क्या कहा कि जब आप 74(10) और 73(10) के टाइम लिमिट कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं, तो जो कोई इशू डिपार्टमेंट के अगेंस्ट हुआ, किसी अथॉरिटी ने किया और उसकी उन्होंने अपील कर दी, तो फ्रॉम द डेट ऑफ ऑर्डर टिल द डेट ऑफ अपीलेट ऑर्डर, दैट पीरियड शैल आल्सो बी एक्सक्लूडेड फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ कंक्लूडिंग द प्रोसीडिंग अंडर सेक्शन 73(10) एंड 11। 75(12) में पहले डील कर चुका हूं, जब सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स कर रहे थे कि सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स कैन बी रिकवर्ड डायरेक्टली अंडर सेक्शन 79, डेफिनेशन भी डील कर चुका हूं। और 75(13) इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सेक्शन। कई सीएस के मुझे फोन आते हैं, सर पेनल्टी सेक्शन 122 है, अगर 73 में पेनल्टी लगी तो क्या 122 में भी लगेगी, या 125 में भी जनरल पेनल्टी लग सकती है? तो 75(13) मेक्स इट वेरी क्लियर, which suggests that no penalty can be levied under section 7, under section any other provision of the act if the penalty has been levied under section 73 or 74. Now we'll come to certain issues with regard to the show cause notice. Show cause notice can be issued only by the proper officer. If I am under the jurisdiction of state, then center has no business to issue me the show cause notice. Center can do the investigation, inform to the state authorities that this is the result of our investigation. State can use that information given in the investigation or inquiry conducted by the center, but then notice must be issued by the proper officer. So jurisdiction के बहुत सारे cases rest while law में भी थे। अब यहाँ distinct person का भी concept है। Under the PAN, you are being allowed to take number of registration if you are operating in number of states. then each number is a separate distinct person. तो उसके लिए अगर शो कॉज करना है तो उसके ऑफिसर को करना पड़ेगा। अब सेंट्रलाइज्ड रजिस्ट्रेशन का कोई कंसेप्ट नहीं है। अगर AB एंड के बत्रा एंड एसोसिएट्स दिल्ली, बॉम्बे, कलकत्ता, मद्रास में है, तो अगर कलकत्ता के नंबर पे कुछ वायलेशन है तो दैट शो कॉज नोटिस मस्ट कम फ्रॉम कलकत्ता। If Delhi, then Delhi. There's no question of any centralized registration. Then there are monetary limits. अगर monetary limits law में provided है, फिर तो उस monetary limits को अगर नहीं follow किया तो show cause notice invalidate हो जाता है। But अगर show cause notice में monetary limits नहीं provide की गई है law में, तो अगर उसको नहीं follow किया गया तो जैसे मैंने कहा वो department की instruction है, उससे notice invalidate नहीं होता है। Non-supplying of information not mandated by law does not amount to suppression. कुछ suppression का principle है, क्योंकि suppression अगर नहीं लगता तो मेरा extended period नहीं लगता, और जब extended period नहीं लगता तो मेरी डिमांड सिर्फ normal period की confirmed होती है। तो जिन situation में suppression नहीं लगता, मैं वो situations की बात कर रहा हूँ। Number 1, non-supply of information not mandated by law. Not if it is mandated by law, then in terms of explanation 2 to section 74, it is a suppression, otherwise no. Mere inaction or failure is not a suppression. Bona fide belief is not a suppression of fact. Ignorance of law, suppression fact can be challenged. No suppression if all material facts are disclosed. Mere claiming classification or exemption does not mean suppression. If it is revenue neutral, then certainly suppression cannot be alleged because it was revenue neutral in the hands of the assessor. There can be two situations where the fact is revenue neutral in my own hand, where the revenue neutral in the hands of other. I'm talking about revenue neutrality in my own. वो ऐसे हो सकता है मेरे को RCM के लैब देनी थी और उसका मुझे क्रेडिट मिल रहा था, then it is a revenue neutral in my own hand, तो suppression नहीं लग सकता। अगर आपने सप्रेशन की पेनल्टीज मेरे पे नहीं लगाई हैं 74 में, तो आप एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड भी नहीं लगा सकते। और जैसे मैंने आपसे पहले कहा, दोबारा रिपीट कर रहा हूं, द ओनस इज ऑन द डिपार्टमेंट टू प्रूव देयर इज अ सप्रेशन फ्रॉड एट विलफुल स्टेटमेंट। क्या एक सिंपल लेटर भी शो कॉज नोटिस हो सकती है? नो, इसमें शो कॉज नोटिस के सारे इंग्रेडिएंट्स होने चाहिए। क्या मैं शो कॉज नोटिस को वेव कर सकता हूं? नो। अगर शो कॉज आना है तो आई कैन नॉट वेव इट, आइदर आई कैन यूज 73(5), 73(8) और 74(5) और 74(8). Then it has to be specific, not on the contention. Now friends, we can discuss certain issues with regard to adjudication, or in between if there is any question you can ask me.
Sir, there are 3 questions. Should I ask?
Please.
So, एक तो था कि एल गोपाल शाह जी बोल रहे हैं, कोविड एक्सटेंशन बाय सुप्रीम कोर्ट विल बी एप्लीकेबल और नॉट फॉर द इशू ऑफ SCN एंड फॉर एजुडिकेशन फॉर मार्च 2022 टू फरवरी 2022, 2020 से फरवरी 2022 तक।
देखिए, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ऑर्डर एप्लीकेबल है wherever the due date falls from 15th of March 2020 to 28th of February 2020. So far as the cess is concerned, absolutely, इवन रिफंड के लिए भी ये प्रोविजन एप्लीकेबल है। अब 3 हाई कोर्ट आ चुके हैं, मद्रास, मुंबई एंड इलाहाबाद, तीनों ने कह दिया कि रिफंड पे भी लगेगा। द ओनली इशू इन डिस्प्यूट इज वेदर दिस फैसिलिटी इज अवेलेबल टू द डिपार्टमेंट आल्सो। सो as I am saying, so far as appeal is concerned, the department can take advantage because there is a time limit. 28 फरवरी के बाद अगर उनको 6 महीने में कर दे तो कर सकते हैं, बट शो कॉज में कोई टाइम लिमिट नहीं लगती, तो इट विल बी वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग टू वॉच। शो कॉज में उनको बेनिफिट मिलेगा नहीं मिलेगा, अपील में उनको भी जरूर मिलेगा, there is no doubt about that.
Right, sir. So another question from L Gopal Shahji: unaccounted goods found in the seizure under section 130 and fine and 100% penalty was charged by department under section 122. Can it will be treated as section 74 fraud or not? And how to defend such situation to avoid income tax issue?
अगर आपने अमेंडमेंट्स देखी हो सब्सिक्वेंट लॉ में, तो अब 130 को बिल्कुल डीलिंक कर दिया गया है 73, 74 से। 29 में जो अपील जाती है वहां भी वो 10% टैक्स नहीं लगता, वहां भी 25% तो पेनल्टी लगती है। अब टैक्स नहीं लगता, 200% पेनल्टी लगती है। जहां तक क्वेश्चन है इनकम टैक्स डिपार्टमेंट में 130 में अगर अनडिक्लेयर्ड डिस्क्लोज गुड्स है तो यू कैन से इट्स अ प्रोसीजरल एरर, ई-वे बिल नहीं बनाया गया. वी हैव ऑलरेडी रिकॉर्डेड दिस ट्रांजैक्शन और जीएसटी ईयर 1. इन एनी केस आप टैक्स तो दो गई, जब टैक्स दोगे उस ट्रांजैक्शन को इंक्लूड कर लो, तो देयर यू कैन टेक दिस काइंड ऑफ स्टैंड. बाकी तो फैक्ट्स के ऊपर डिपेंड करता है कि व्हाट अदर डिफेंसेस आई कैन टेक, बट ब्रॉडली आई कैन से सो that you must admit that this was a genuine supply. अगर ट्रांसपोर्टर ने ई-वे बिल लगाना है, उसने व्हीकल नंबर गलत लिख दिया और व्हीकल नंबर लेटर से स्कूटर का लिख दिया, या ऐसे व्हीकल का लिख दिया which is not being meant to carry the goods, so certainly you can say procedural lapse, transaction is genuine. मैंने बैंक से पेमेंट किया, मेरा माल गया है, मेरा माल मिला. जब मिला फिजिकली माल तो गया यार, मैंने ई-वे बिल, मैंने पोर्टल पे ई-वे बिल कहाँ बनाया? पोर्टल को प्राइवेट पोर्टल नहीं है, सरकार का पोर्टल है. So that means my intent is not to save the tax, avoid the tax. So all these kind of decisions can be taken, but all depends on the facts of the case.
Gopal ji, you have raised your hand. You can ask your question directly.
Sir, hello.
Gopal ji, please go ahead.
Yes, Ashok sir, can you hear me?
हाँ, positive.
सर, अगर वो माने एनफोर्समेंट वाले ने वहाँ ऑफिस दुकान में रेड किया और कुछ उनको स्टॉक मिला जो वो
67 की बात करें, सेक्शन 67 इन्वोक हुआ.
यस, तो वो चिट्ठा बना रहे थे.
129, 130 will be there only when the goods are in movement. वहाँ डिफरेंस डिफरेंट होती है. अब जब 67 में किया, आपको बिजनेस प्रीमाइसेस पे किया, we're talking about section 67. Yes, now tell me.
But unaccounted goods lying in the premises.
There can be, what do you mean by unaccounted goods? There have been certain physical goods which has been found, and as per your books, the sale is the stock is, let us say, 100 rupees and the goods are worth rupees 150, right? Or alternatively, there can be a situation कि जो माल मिला उसका आपके पास परचेज बिल ही नहीं है. ने कहा भाई आपने कहाँ से लिया, आपको परचेज बिल नहीं है. So now the thing is how these goods have come to you. If you are a manufacturer, you can take a ground के जॉब वर्क पे आया था माल, मेरे पास अभी उसके डॉक्यूमेंट्स नहीं है, इस तरह कोई एक्सक्यूज ले सकते हो. If you are a trader, then you can say that this goods were sold by me earlier in case you have dealt with, and unfortunately they were not found to be correct. There have been certain deficiencies. Yes, send me to remove the deficiencies. So in any case, somewhere you have to give some reasoning. If there is no possible reason you can offer it to the department, then certainly you have to admit your fault.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sir, Gaurav Goyal ji ने पूछा है, can an officer summon someone using their personal Gmail IDs?
सर, अगर आप ऑब्जेक्ट भी करेंगे तो दोबारा सम्मन नहीं दे देगा. The only thing is I may say this is not a valid service and someone must be served at my email ID which I have shared with the department. If you have shared your communication ID, your personal email ID, then department is not wrong in serving the someone on that email ID. And suppose you say it is wrong, he will say, okay, fine, I am issuing you now, this is the correct someone and this is the correct email. Now please appear before me on such and such date. What will you do? कोई टाइम लिमिट तो है नहीं. Someone is in relation to investigation. सम्मन तो किसी भी आदमी को कर सकता है wherever he feels that his presence is required to verify certain facts or is in possession of certain documents which he needs for the purpose of his investigation in his case or in some other case. ऐसा नहीं है कि इन्वेस्टिगेशन तो अशोक बत्रा की हो रही है और सम्मन गोपाल नहीं हो सकता. गोपाल शाह भी हो सकता है. तो डायरेक्ट टैक्स थोड़ी है, तो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स है. भैया जो मिस्टर बत्रा ने क्रेडिट क्लेम किया उसकी सेल ही मिस्टर गोपाल शाह ने की है, तो गोपाल शाह भी सम्मान हो जाएगा. भाई तूने किसको किया नहीं किया, मिस्टर बत्रा क्लेम करना है आईटीसी ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ इनवॉइस इशूड बाय गोपाल शाह, तो इवन गोपाल शाह कैन बी सम्मन. अब ये तो इनडायरेक्ट टैक्सेस है, गुड्स का टैक्स है. आई एम एक्टिंग एज एन एजेंट ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट. तो मान लीजिए कहीं जो डाउट है तो इवन ट्रांसपोर्टर कैन बी सम्मन, माय बैंकर कैन बी सम्मन, वेदर दिस मनी हैज कम थ्रू बैंक और जमा कराई है, या उसके बाद ये पूछ सकता है कि जो पैसा इसके अकाउंट में आ रहा था ये इमीडिएटली नेक्स्ट डे क्यों ट्रांसफर हो जाता है और कहाँ हो जाता है. इन ऑर्डर टू एस्टेब्लिश द लिंक, दीज आर नॉट इन जेन्युइन फॉर्म, यू कैन कॉल एनी पर्सन.
Right, sir. Sir, Supriya Kapoor ji पूछ रही थी, few bills in GST are 2A were not taken in books. What are the consequences for SEC?
अब आप कह रहे हैं 2A की बुक्स इनवॉइस बुक्स में नहीं लिए. Look at the language. You mean to say that you have made the purchases but you have not recorded those purchases in your books of accounts. So far as income tax is concerned, income tax आपकी बुक्स की रिजेक्ट भी हो सकती है. So many consequences can be there. So far as GST is concerned, if you are not taken that good, certainly you are not shown the supply also. So the department can say this is a purchase and sale without recording the transaction books of account in terms of section 132. I think clause A, very clear. If you issue an invoice or receipt or you don't record any transaction after procuring the goods, you can be prosecuted. If the amount is more than 5 crore, you can be arrested also. And this is what it is being done in most of the cases. सब जगह 132 के ABCD लगाया अरेस्ट हुआ आदमी, और कोई सेक्शन लगा भी नहीं है. और अगर कहीं डिमांड 2 करोड़ और 5 करोड़ के बीच में है, then he will arrest you and release you because it is non-cognizable and bailable. 5 crore से ऊपर है, it is cognizable and non-bailable. So those consequences. But then this prosecution is not the only part. अब आप ये देखें कि जहां फेक ट्रांजैक्शंस होती हैं, वहां सरकार ने इसको किस तरह से फाइनेंशियली एंड इकोनॉमिकली आपके अगेंस्ट किया है. पहले मैं 100 रुपए की परचेज करता था बोगस, 18 रुपए मुझे जीएसटी क्रेडिट मिलता था, 100 रुपए का खर्चा मिलता था इनकम टैक्स में, मुझे 58 रुपए बचते थे, और उसकी कॉस्टिंग आती थी 5 या 6 रुपए. मैं मैनेज कर लेता था 52 रुपए में सबको. अब सरकार ने क्या कहा कि भैया अगर 100 रुपए की परचेज करोगे, 18 रुपए जीएसटी है, तो 118 की तो पेनल्टी इनकम टैक्स में होगी एडी में. फिर 40% खर्चा वहां निकल गया, तो 118 और 40 में 100 रुपए का खर्चा जो आपने परचेज में डाला है, 18 चलो आप क्रेडिट में लेंगे, 100 रुपए तो परचेज डाली है, 40 रुपए वो 158, और यहाँ 18 प्लस इंटरेस्ट प्लस पेनल्टी 74 में 54 यहाँ हो गए. तो अब आपकी कैलकुलेशन कहाँ फेल कर दी सरकार ने. सरकार ने बड़े इंपॉर्टेंट काम किए हैं. अगर आप पिछले 2 साल में देखेंगे तो आप देखेंगे पहले सप्लायर की डिमांड निकलती थी. वो सप्लायर तो होता था रामलाल, गोपीनाथ, हीरानंद. वो तो कहीं छोटे छोटे आदमी होते थे, 100 करोड़ बिजनेस कर देते थे 2 महीने में. तो पैसे जब जाते थे वो तो लाला होता था, उसे लिंक किया, पैसे निकाले और दूसरे को ट्रांसफर करके भाग गया. तो उसकी डिमांड निकलती थी, वही प्रोसिक्यूट होता था, वो मिलता ही नहीं था. या क्रेडिट जाता था सरकार उसका बायर का, जो अल्टीमेटली फैक्ट्री वाला जिसे बिल लिया, वो बेचारा फेस करता था कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस. और जो मास्टर किंग पिन था जिससे वो फर्में बनाई थी, उसके अगेंस्ट कोई एक्शन नहीं होता था. फिर उन्होंने सेक्शन 132 को अमेंड किया और ये कहा anyone at whose instance these transactions are carried out, he can be subject to prosecution. फाइनेंशियल मैंने आपको बता दिया कैसे उन्होंने आउट किया. एंड फाइनली देयर हैव बीन सर्टेन ब्रोकर्स, वो ब्रोकर प्रोफेशनल भी हो सकते हैं, किसी भी प्रोफेशन के हो सकते हैं, वो टेकिंग कमीशन आउट ऑफ दिस ट्रांजैक्शन. तो 132 में ये भी लिख दिया, एनी पर्सन हु इज टेकिंग बेनिफिट आउट ऑफ दोस ट्रांजैक्शन कैन आल्सो बी सब्जेक्ट टू प्रोसिक्यूशन. तो सरकार ने तो अपनी तरफ से शिकंजा कस दिया है. अब आपके ऊपर है, जैसे आप करना चाहें वो आपकी इच्छा है.
Right, sir. CA Prankush Tiwari ji, you have raised your hand. Please, you can ask.
Yes, sir. Batra sir, good evening, sir.
गुड इवनिंग जी.
हाँ सर, ऐसा था कि CGST से भी शो कॉज नोटिस आ गया और IGST से आ गया, तो फिर SSC क्या करे, किसको दे रिप्लाई, दोनों के दे कि किसी एक को? नहीं
सर, जिसके जुरिसडिक्शन में आप आते हैं शो कॉज सिर्फ वही इशू कर सकता है. सेक्शन 6 है CGST एक्ट का जो जुरिसडिक्शन में डील करता है. वहां उन्होंने बड़ा क्लियरली कहा है कि आपका इन्वेस्टिगेशन तो सेंटर भी करेगा, स्टेट भी करेगा,
ठीक है.
लेकिन शो कॉज नोटिस तो वही करेगा जिसकी जुरिसडिक्शन में आप आते हैं. अगर आप स्टेट में रजिस्टर्ड है, वहां रिटर्न फाइल करते हैं, तो शो कॉज नोटिस वही वैलिड है, सेंटर वाला इनवैलिड है. अगर आप सेंटर में आते हैं और वहां रिटर्न फाइल करते हैं तो स्टेट वाला इनवैलिड है. जहां आप आते हैं वहां लिखे कि मेरी जुरिसडिक्शन अथॉरिटी ये है, आपको कोई जुरिसडिक्शन नहीं है, आई एम नॉट सपोज्ड टू रिप्लाई टू यू.
ठीक है सर, ओके, थैंक यू सर. मार देंगे.
I have a question.
Yes, madam.
Sir, department is issuing mails in regards demanding interest for late payment on GST along with GST returns at the time of late GST return for 2017, 18, 19. So, but no show cause notice has been issued or issued by the department. So, sir, how we supposed to respond?
Are you challenging the calculation of interest?
Sorry?
Are you challenging the
No, sir.
calculation of interest?
No, sir.
Then show cause notice is not required. I was reading 75(9), which clearly says whether or not demanded, and section 50 also says that recovery of interest is automatic. Show cause notice is not required. There are judgment in your favor, but then in all those cases, we are challenging the interest levy. Either on any ground you challenge it, so because there's a COVID period, so many relief has been given, Mr. Home said this, so I'm not liable to pay interest on humanitarian ground. I challenge the levy. If you challenge it, then certainly he's bound to issue the show cause.
So,
you
sir,
challenge the interest levy on any ground.
So, sir, if we are paying the interest in DRC 03, so we should show it as a voluntary payment because no show cause notice has been issued.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the same has been responded to the department by the mail, over reply to the mail received.
Yes.
That will suffice our.
That will suffice your compliance.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Praveen. Praveen Vasedar ji, please ask.
जी नमस्कार जी सर. तो 73-74 के बारे में बोल रहा हूँ कि समझो कि 73 केस में अगर 3 साल के बाद मुझे कोई नोटिस नहीं, कोई एडजुडिकेशन नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं है, मतलब मान लो कि गंगा नहा लिया कि उसमें कुछ होने वाला नहीं है, अनलेस फ्रॉड होगा तो 5 ईयर का ही.
सर अगर आपने टैक्स कलेक्ट करके जमा नहीं कराया, अगर वो सिचुएशन नहीं है तो डिपार्टमेंट कैन नॉट रिकवर एनी अमाउंट फ्रॉम यू.
ओके सर, थैंक यू सर.
Thank you, Praveen ji.
For example, मैं सर्विस टैक्स के लिए बता दूं, there is no dispute that up to 31st March 16 it has become time barred. So अगर 15-16 की डिपार्टमेंट कोई रिकवरी मांगता है तो आपको उसका रिस्पॉन्ड करने की जरूरत नहीं है. और you can simply say it has become time barred. I am not responding.
ठीक है सर, आप कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं सर.
चलिए सर, और क्वेश्चंस नहीं है तो जैसे मैंने कहा था कि कॉम्पिटेंट अथॉरिटी ही इशू करनी चाहिए. इसमें कैनन इंडिया में आपको देख लिया कि प्रॉपर ऑफिसर की कितनी ताकत है. सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बता दिया इफ इज नॉट अ प्रॉपर ऑफिसर देन ऑल प्रोसीडिंग हैड टू बी इनवैलिड. हियरिंग आपको फेयर एंड रीजनेबल देनी चाहिए, इसके ऊपर भी मैं आपको बता चुका हूं. नाउ द क्वेश्चन कम्स आफ्टर पासिंग एन ऑर्डर, कैन आई रिव्यू माय ऑर्डर? You can only review to the extent there are arithmetical error, mistake apparent on record. But you cannot improve the quality of your order once it is being issued and it has come into public domain. ऐसा नहीं है कि आज मैंने ऑर्डर कर दिया 100 रुपए की डिमांड का, कल मुझे याद आया मैं 20 पे भूल गया तो I can pass another order or amending the original order. I cannot review my order. Another important thing is show cause notice की जो time limit है, which is with reference to the adjudication notice. But then the show cause notice is not deemed to have been served properly if the relied upon document which are there in the show cause notice, they have not been served to the client. Meaning thereby कई बार ये देखा जाता है कि जल्दबाजी में वो आपसे show cause notice की रिसीट ले लेते हैं, लेकिन जो RUD है वो नहीं सर्व करते. तो जो date of RUD है, that is being treated as the date of show cause notice, and on that basis limitation period will be calculated. Am I clear? Once again I am repeating. For example, show cause notice आपको 25 अप्रैल 2016 में आया और आपको RUD दिया उन्होंने अक्टूबर 16 में, तो नेचुरली जो अप्रैल टू सितंबर 2011 का पीरियड है वो टाइम बार्ड हो गया, because the date of show cause notice will be considered the day on which the RUD is being supplied. अगर शो कॉज नोटिस वेग है, स्पेसिफिक एलिगेशंस नहीं है, तो अब तो बहुत सारी जजमेंट आने लगी क्योंकि स्टेट वालों को पता नहीं था, तो स्टेट के बहुत सारे शो कॉज नोटिस पे हाई कोर्ट ने कहा और कई जगह उन्होंने एग्जाम्पलरी कॉस्ट फीस लगाई है. तो वेग शो कॉज नोटिस नहीं हो सकता. शो कॉज नोटिस हैज टू बी वेरी वेरी स्पेसिफिक. एक बड़ी इंपॉर्टेंट जजमेंट है शुभम इलेक्ट्रिकल, इंसिडेंटली केस मेरा ही आर्ग्यू किया हुआ, दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट में भी आप देखते हैं, डिपार्टमेंट गया और वहां हार गया. वहां भी वेगनेस का इशू था. थर्ड, अब क्वेश्चन ये है कि व्हेन वी आर रिप्रेजेंटिंग बिफोर द अथॉरिटीज, व्हाट इज द बेस्ट वे टू रिप्रेजेंट योर केस एडजुडिकेशन? अब देखिए, पहले तो एडजुडिकेशन में जो आदमी अपीयर होगा, he should be a competent person in terms of section 116 read with 215. either you should be chartered accountant, employee या जो भी सेक्शन में लिखा हुआ आदमी वो प्रॉपर अपीयर होना चाहिए. सेकेंडली, ये एक ऐसा लॉ है जहाँ शो कॉज नोटिस 20 पेज का आता है, आपका रिप्लाई 30 पेज का जाता है, ऑर्डर ओरिजिनल 60 पेज का आता है, क्योंकि पहले तो 20 के शो कॉज नोटिस रिप्रोड्यूस करेगा, फिर आपका रिप्लाई देगा 30 पेज में, फिर 10 पेज में अपनी डिस्कशन एंड फाइंडिंग देगा. तो इतना वॉल्यूमस रिकॉर्ड हो जाता है. तो मेरा ये सजेशन है कि व्हेन यू अपीयर बिफोर द एडजुडिकेटिंग अथॉरिटी, मे बी वर्बली और मे बी थ्रू दिस व्हाट डू यू कॉल इट, की हियरिंग, व्हाटएवर. सो वहां पे आप एक सिनॉप्सिस जरूर बनाएं. उस सिनॉप्सिस में ब्रीफ फैक्ट्स, ब्रीफ केस ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट, दिस इज द केस ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट, आप अपनी जो डिफेंसेस हैं वो भी लिखें. और अगर पॉसिबल हो तो सिनॉप्सिस में जो आपका डिटेल्ड रिप्लाई गया हुआ उसके पेजेस रेफर कर सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, दिस इज द एलिगेशन ऑफ द डिपार्टमेंट एट पेज नंबर 100 ऑफ द शो कॉज नोटिस. Then this is the case of the department, this is the refer page number 100 of the show cause notice. Then these are my defenses. So why defenses? You can refer to this of the appeal book or this of the adjudication order, this of the paper book. So वो synopsis जो है वो बहुत important हो जाती है when you go to the higher authority. When we say that these are the documents submitted before the lower authority and he has not cared to answer this and forget हो गया, ये 150 पेज कौन पढ़ेगा. बोला सर मैंने तो 5 पेज के भी दिए थे, उसमें भी लिख के दिया था, ये केस लॉ मैंने यहाँ लिखा है, डिटेल में वहाँ डिस्कशन है, मैंने पेजेस भी मार्क करके दिए थे. बल्कि रादर नाउ वी आर फाइलिंग ए पेज जहाँ बहुत बड़े बड़े केसेस होते हैं. फॉर एग्जांपल, आई एम गोइंग टू आर्ग्यू वन केस ऑफ रायपुर डेवलपमेंट जहाँ शो कॉज नोटिस 125 पेज का, ऑर्डर ओरिजिनल 300 पेज का. तो वहाँ एलिगेशन कहाँ है, मेरी डिफेंस कहाँ है और डिपार्टमेंट की फाइंडिंग कहाँ है, उस सब पेजेस का एक चार्ट बना के हम उसको दे देते हैं. एक additional document submission, ये बड़ा एक important issue है which we chartered accountant must realize. Any document in the appellate authority will not be entertained unless it has been examined by the lower authorities. Except the exception is where you have been prevented by reasonable cause or there have been force majeure clause or something that has happened that you could not produce it. So in that case, you have to file a reply along with reasons for not submitting the document. You must write a application to the appellate authority asking the permission to file the additional document. जहां तक grounds का issue है, वहां कोई problem नहीं है. You can take those grounds, legal grounds, even in first appellate say, second appellate say, legal ground is not at all an issue. But you must take a ground, I will be permitted to raise the additional ground if required. But whatever grounds have already been taken before the appeal, let us say it has been filed with some other professional, the matter comes to you, you want to add certain other things, you can file an application wherein you can say that these additional legal grounds may be taken. If they are legal grounds which they have to consider, then the court will pass an order. बहुत सारे ऐसे judgments हैं which are available on excess, etc., where they have stated that even rate of tax, limitation period, these are all legal grounds which can be taken at subsequent stage. वो भी आप ले सकते हो. एक रिकॉर्ड ऑफ पर्सनल हियरिंग आजकल ईमेल पे आता है जिसको आप डिजिटल साइन करके भेजते हो, उसको थोड़ा ध्यान से पढ़ना चाहिए because whatever has been stated in that record of personal hearing, that must be properly recorded. जैसे मैंने कहा कि there cannot be any recovery without issuance of a show cause notice. Even in the case of interest, you want the department to issue the show cause. As I was replying to the query of one of the lady, so where I said that you must challenge the levy of interest, then only show cause notice is required. Another important thing which is applicable only to CGST. Once you are looking at a document issued by the department, it must contain DIN number. In the absence of DIN, अभी मैं कहीं सुन रहा था परसों जो निर्मला सीतारमन जी भी बोल रही थी कि अगर डॉक्यूमेंट पे DIN नंबर नहीं है तो कूड़े के डिब्बे में फेंक दो. It is a रद्दी, it is a piece of paper. So now but this is not applicable to state GST. Again, my humble submission is this DIN is a very important thing, and there is a verification process also. You can go to the portal of the government and verify whether this DIN is genuine or not. So this DIN business which has become important now. So wherever there is a failure, so there is being considered that notice is never being served on. Then, as I told you, extended period, I have given you certain situation where suppression of facts cannot be alleged. Now, in the case of interpretational issues, in the case of bona fide belief you have to prove, then certainly extended period cannot be proved. Believe me, this extended period, if it is not being invocable and they have invoked it and you get the relief, sometimes it is a huge relief. क्योंकि अगर आपके 100 रुपए की डिमांड भी कम होती है, then corresponding interest and penalty also goes down. And sometimes the demand for the major period is for the subsequent period. उसका बिजनेस पहले नया होता है, धीरे धीरे पिकअप करता है, और जो पीछे वाले पीरियड जब वो डिमांड टाइम बार्ड होती है तो आपकी सब्सटेंशियल रिलीफ आपको मिलता है. तो एक्सटेंडेड पीरियड और लिमिटेशन पीरियड, इसको थोड़ा सा ध्यान से देखें. Then finally, I want to comment on the situation of best judgment assessment. Best judgment assessment, if you want, I can deal various case laws, including Deepak Industry of Delhi High Court. It is not a judgment based on assumption and surmises. पुराने जीएसटी लॉ में भी सर्विस टैक्स में सेक्शन 72 को 1 साल के लिए इन्वोक कर दिया जाता था, जहां पेपर या डॉक्यूमेंट नहीं दिए जाते थे. So now in GST, invoking the best judgment assessment and inflating the demand unnecessarily to harass the assessee so that he has to pay a huge amount as a pre-deposit before he is being heard for merit before the appellate authority is very difficult. क्योंकि GST law में lot of information is available to the authorities with regard to my purchase and sale both. So department cannot allege you have made a sale but there is no purchase. 2A is there, 2B is there of my supplier, e-way bill is there. So many information is available with the department, all about digital. You have to simply type GST and number and the whole lot of information comes to your knowledge. So the department, while framing the best judgment assessment, must take care of all the information available, including 2A, 2B, final return, DRC03, liability ledger, credit ledger, cash ledger, everything. So best judgment assessment, ignoring these information will be very difficult to hold by the department, particularly in the GST era. With these words, I think I've taken a marathon session for 3 hours. Now I need, because earlier on also there was a lecture from 3 to 3:45. So I was speaking 45 minutes earlier to that also. So with this, I would like to take a pause. Yes, I am available here because I think there is some time left, 10 minutes perhaps, wherein I will try to answer your questions if there are any.
Sir, first of all, hats off for speaking such a long time frame, and as you said, कि आप इसके पहले भी एक सेशन ले रहे थे, तो to be very frank,
to be very frank, नवीन, मैं जो एडमिट करना पड़ेगा कि आज मैं भी थोड़ा सा थका हुआ महसूस कर रहा हूँ because age factor is coming now. So I was speaking from 3 to 3:45 and now 4 to almost 7. So anyway, I am here to answer all your queries if there are any.
Sir, एक question आया हुआ है by Shashi Goyal ji. The authorization of search has not been signed by the Joint Commissioner digitally or physically. The copy received over mail has been furnished to the assessee. Whether the search made is valid.
देखिए, ये आपने जो फैक्ट्स के हैं मैंने सुने हैं, मैंने भी उस पर माइंड पूरा अप्लाई नहीं किया. The only thing is, जैसे ही आपके यहाँ 67 में सर्च पार्टी आती है, they will serve you the authorization warrant first. Naturally, अगर authorization उन्होंने पेश किया सुबह 6 बजे आपके पास या सुबह 10 बजे, तो उनके पास जो पुराना जो ऑथराइजेशन मिला होगा जॉइंट कमिश्नर वगैरह से, वो तो उनका पहले के टाइम का होना चाहिए. So we have to corroborate all these documentary evidence. If there is any flaw, there are number of case law in income tax where on these technical grounds the search has been called to be invalid.
Right, sir. Sir, a question है N Anand Roy ji का. ITC is in the books of accounts but not shown in the returns under VAT. Can the dealer claim during assessment or not?
देखिए, आप अंडर वैट लिखते हैं, अगर जीएसटी भी लिखते हैं तब भी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ेगा, क्योंकि जीएसटी में भी यही उनका कहना है डिपार्टमेंट का. बट मेरा ये कहना है availment of credit is always in the books of account. 3B is only a reporting requirement. अगर आप इस फाइनेंस बिल 2022 को देखें तो यहाँ उन्होंने जो पीरियड आपका 30 सितंबर था उनको 30 नवंबर तक एक्सटेंड किया, 40 दिन और दिए. अगर इसका ड्यू डेट ऑफ फाइलिंग ऑफ रिटर्न से लिंक होता then they would have granted you time in 16(4) etc. also, which is linked with the period of return. But डिपार्टमेंट में कोई नहीं मान रहा है. बहुत सारे सेमिनार में बहुत सारे डिपार्टमेंटल ऑफिसर से मेरी बात हुई. I would not like to name them. And they are publicly speaking कि जब तक 3B में नहीं लोगे तब तक हम आपको उसका अवेलमेंट नहीं मानेंगे. But I really don't understand the logic. In my humble opinion, of course, there is no judgment available on this, and I cannot support my case by citing any example. But the question is whether credit can be availed in return. It can be reported in return. Once I have claimed the credit in my books of account, then if my accountant has failed to report it in 3B because of any human error, can you say I'm not entitled for the credit? If you look at the case law with regard to trans 1, अभी भी पर्सनल जजमेंट आई है. मैं आपको बता देता हूँ, उसकी साइटेशन भी मेरे पास है. 2022 VIL 220 मद्रास हाई कोर्ट. उन्होंने आज भी ट्रांस 1 को दे दिया. बोला दिस क्रेडिट इज इंडिफिजिबल. हाउ कैन यू डिनाई माय क्रेडिट simply because I am not reporting it in my 3B? I don't agree with that. But unfortunately, there is no judgment with me yet now because a new law, it will take time to reach to the high courts. और रेट jurisdiction में ऐसे क्वेश्चन आंसर नहीं होते हैं 226 और 32 में. ये क्वेश्चन मैंने कहीं नहीं पढ़ा, किसी और ने पढ़ा तो मुझे पता नहीं, मेरी नॉलेज में नहीं आया. तो मेरे हिसाब से अवेलमेंट इज ओनली इन द बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट. इफ यू हैव अवेल्ड, लेट अस से आपने 16-17 का क्रेडिट अवेल कर लिया बुक्स में, आप 18-19 में भूल गए, रिटर्न में दिखाना भूल गए, उस रिटर्न को चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट ने साइन किया है, आपने साइन किया, वो इन्फॉर्मेशन आप 2.5 साल पहले डिपार्टमेंट में दे चुके हैं जहां आपका क्रेडिट सनवर्ट रिकवरेबल में आ रहा होगा. So with this kind of information, can the department say you are not availed it? I don't agree with that view, which is being taken by the department. In my humble opinion, the credit availed in the books of account is a valid claim of credit. It may be utilized subsequently anytime. हाँ, ये अलग बात है कि आपने 4 साल इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न नहीं भरी, आरओसी की रिटर्न नहीं गई, पेमेंट उसकी आपकी 17-18 में हुई है, अब आप एंट्री करना चाह रहे हो. सो फैक्ट्स का तो थोड़ा बहुत रोल रहेगा, बट इन जेन्युइन केसेस जो नॉर्मली हम बात करते हैं, एक केस में तो हो ही सकता है ना, मैंने 4 साल की रिटर्न नहीं होता, इनकम टैक्स रिटर्न भरी थी और नहीं भरी, पर मैंने एंट्री की थी, आरओसी भरी नहीं भरी, मैंने एंट्री की थी. अब वहां सारी प्रोसीडिंग चल रही है, कंपनी का क्या हुआ, एनसीएलटी में गई नहीं गई, वो सब अदर इश्यूज हैं. बट इन नॉर्मल सिचुएशन, माय हम्बल अंडरस्टैंडिंग ऑफ द लॉ इज वेरी क्लियर दैट अवेलमेंट कैन बी ओनली इन द बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स, नॉट ऑन द पोर्टल.
राइट सर.
बट आई नवीन जी, आई गिव अ वर्ड ऑफ कॉशन. बहुत सारे प्रोफेशनल मेरे इस व्यू से एग्री नहीं करते हैं. So you have to take your own view, because there are professionals which they quote certain provisions of law and they say no, it is only 3B. But according to my understanding, I can also quote number of provisions which support my view. But then there is no final call from the court, and I am cautioning you simply because don't rely on my word, because number of professionals doesn't agree with me. Maybe the other speaker called Jatin ji aayenge, he is a very good speaker as well as a knowledgeable person. You can ask him also what is his personal view.
Sure, sir. Sir, first of all, thanks a lot from my side, and I would request convener Saroj Waika ji to conclude and then wrap up the session. Over to you, Saroj ji.
Thank you, Naveen. Sir, सबसे पहले मैं ये बोलूँगा, it was a wonderful session hearing you for continuously 3 hours. 1 मिनट भी ऐसा ही लगा कि इंटरेस्ट कहीं पे भी डाइवर्ट हो रहा है. Continuously without movement, I had heard you. It was so nice of hearing you and speaking continuously in spite of earlier sessions taken by you today. You are looking tired also, no issues. And there were many questions raised by the delegates today, which has made this session very interactive too. You have cleared all their doubts in mind. So I enjoyed the session, including all the delegates. So I am very thankful to you personally. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Pallavi ji to offer a formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Pallavi.
Pallavi ji, please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Views Exchange and all the participants of the current session, I would like to thank Ashok Batra ji for giving us such elaborate knowledge on different assessment and adjudication sections of GST. And he has enlightened us with various ways to face the practical difficulties related to these sections and assessment and adjudication and show cause notices. I'm sure this knowledge he gave us today will definitely help us in our day-to-day work. Once again, I am thankful to Ashok Batra ji for taking out time out of his busy schedule for giving us this knowledgeable deliberation. I would like to thank all the attendees for being so attentive and making this an interactive session. And now I request Naveen Khemka ji for winding up the session.
Thank you, Pallavi ji. Thank you, Ashok ji. Thanks all the participants. Do join tomorrow for tomorrow's session. Thanks a lot. Bye.